You've been told that happiness comes from having more success, more approval, more possessions. But if that were true, why do so many people who seem to have everything still feel empty inside? Why do you still feel restless, anxious, and caught in a cycle of overthinking? Why can't you truly enjoy the present moment? The truth is, happiness isn't something you chase, it's something you uncover from within. And Buddhist wisdom has been showing us the way for centuries. The greatest spiritual teachers, like the Buddha himself, unlocked the secret to peace and contentment, not by chasing after more, but by realizing that everything you need is already inside you. It's about seeing that nothing is missing. Tonight, as you listen to these lessons, something will shift within you. Your mind will slow down. The weight of wanting more will begin to lift. You'll start to feel a sense of calm, like the stillness that comes after a storm. Tomorrow, you'll wake up with a clearer view of the world, stronger, calmer, and fully aware that you are already complete. This isn't just another audio to fall asleep to. This is the beginning of a transformation. Are you ready? Let's begin. As you begin to listen, you'll soon realize that the feeling of something is missing isn't just a fleeting thought, it's something far deeper, something that has been built into your mindset over the years. You've been conditioned to believe that happiness lies outside of you, that fulfillment is just one more purchase, one more achievement, or one more approval away. But what if I told you that this belief is the very thing holding you back from true peace? Buddhism offers a powerful antidote to this relentless cycle of wanting more. It teaches that the feeling of lacking isn't because you're incomplete, it's because you're attached to the idea that you need something external to complete you. This belief that more is always better, that happiness lies just beyond your reach, is a trap. But breaking free from it, that's where the real freedom begins. The Buddhist path doesn't promise happiness in the form of possessions or achievements. Instead, it offers a deeper, more profound form of peace, the kind that comes from knowing you are already whole. This wisdom encourages us to look inward, to recognize that the constant feeling of wanting more is driven by attachment, and once we begin to understand that, we can let go of it and, in doing so, unlock a sense of fulfillment that is always available to us. At the core of this teaching is the understanding that attachment is what fuels the illusion of lack. When you attach your happiness to things outside of yourself, whether it's a promotion, a new gadget, or the approval of others, you set yourself up for disappointment. The joy these things bring is fleeting because the very act of attachment creates a sense of dependency. You begin to believe that without them, you are not enough. But this is a lie. The Buddha spoke about this illusion of lack when he shared his teachings on the nature of desire and attachment. He explained that it's not the objects or experiences themselves that cause suffering, but the attachment to them. When you attach your sense of identity, your happiness, your worth to these external things, you enter a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. Each time you fulfill one desire, another rises in its place. And so you are constantly chasing something, never quite feeling complete. This craving, this unending desire, is what creates the illusion that something is missing in your life. But once you can see through this illusion, you will begin to understand that you are not defined by what you have, but by who you are. In Buddhist philosophy, the first step in transcending the feeling of lack is awareness. Being aware of how attachment operates in your life is the key to understanding how it creates suffering. When you realize that your need for external validation, possessions, or achievements is simply a mental construct, you begin to dismantle the very foundation of that desire. As you start to let go of these attachments, you will notice a shift, an inner calm that arises not from acquiring more, but from recognizing that you already have everything you need. This understanding doesn't mean you stop enjoying life's pleasures. You can still have desires, enjoy your achievements, and appreciate the things you have, but the difference lies in how you relate to them. When you release attachment, the things you once thought were essential to your happiness no longer hold power over you. You can enjoy life's pleasures without becoming enslaved to them. In this way, you start to experience true freedom, a freedom that doesn't depend on the ever-changing nature of external circumstances. Letting go of attachment doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, one that requires mindfulness and patience. Meditation, an essential practice in Buddhism, plays a critical role in this transformation. Through meditation, you begin to observe your thoughts and desires from a distance, without judgment. You see them for what they truly are: fleeting, impermanent, and not a reflection of your true self. This awareness allows you to release the grip of attachment and move towards a more peaceful, contented existence. What happens when you begin to practice this awareness? Slowly, the illusion of lack begins to dissolve. You start to recognize that your happiness is not dependent on any external factor. It comes from within, from the quiet space of being present with yourself. You realize that your sense of completeness doesn't lie in the things you own, the status you've achieved, or the opinions of others. It lies in your ability to be at peace with who you are, just as you are, in this very moment. This shift in perception is transformative. It's a subtle yet profound change that affects every aspect of your life. As the Buddha teaches, when you let go of the desire for more, you discover the richness of the present moment. You begin to see that nothing is missing from your life right now, not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer rely on external factors to define your happiness. You might be wondering, but what about the things I want in life? What about the things I need? The Buddhist teachings don't say that you should stop desiring things altogether. Desire is a natural part of being human. What they teach is that you should not let your desires control you. When you are attached to an outcome, whether it's a possession, a relationship, or a goal, you set yourself up for suffering. When you let go of that attachment, you open yourself up to a deeper, more fulfilling way of living. It's not about rejecting desire, but rather about understanding the impermanence of everything. Nothing in life stays the same. The things you desire today may no longer hold the same appeal tomorrow. The very nature of existence is change, and once you begin to accept this, you stop seeing life through the lens of lack and instead start to see it for what it truly is, an ever-evolving process of becoming, of growth, of experience. In Buddhism, this understanding of impermanence is key. It's not about holding on to things, whether they are physical possessions or emotional states. It's about understanding that everything is transient, that nothing lasts forever. And in that realization, you find freedom. When you no longer cling to the idea that something is missing, you begin to experience the fullness of life as it is, without the need to force it to be something else. This is the beauty of Buddhist wisdom. It offers you a new way of relating to your desires. Instead of chasing after them, trying to fill the emptiness you feel, you begin to sit with them, observe them, and understand them for what they are. You realize that happiness doesn't come from the fulfillment of desire, but from the release of it. When you stop identifying with your desires, you stop identifying with the idea that something is missing. This shift in perspective is a process of transformation. Over time, you will begin to feel lighter, more at peace, and more whole. You will no longer be running after the next thing, constantly striving for more. Instead, you will find joy in the present moment, in the simplicity of just being. This is the ultimate lesson of Buddhism. You are already whole, and nothing is missing. It's all right here, in the present moment, if only you can see it. As you continue on this journey, Remember that the process of letting go is not about force or denial. It's about gentle awareness, patience, and compassion towards yourself. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you will begin to see how attachment to external things creates suffering. And the more you understand this, the more you will experience the peace that comes from knowing you are already complete. You may feel resistance at first, and that's okay. It's normal to hold on to the things that you believe make you feel secure. But as you continue to practice, as you continue to embrace the Buddhist teachings of mindfulness and non-attachment, you'll notice that the things you once believed you needed begin to lose their power over you. You'll feel freer, lighter, and more connected to your true self. This transformation is a journey, not a destination. Every moment is an opportunity to practice, to observe, and to release. It's a gentle unfolding that happens over time, with each breath, each moment of mindfulness, and with each step you take, you will begin to see that nothing is missing from your life, not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need perfection to feel whole. As you continue to let go of the illusion of lacking, you'll discover a new kind of richness, a richness that comes from within, a richness that is always available to you, no matter your circumstances. It is a richness that is not dependent on anything external, but is a reflection of your true nature, your inherent completeness. And in this realization, you will find the peace and happiness that you have been searching for all along. It was never outside of you. It was never something you needed to chase. It was always within you, just waiting for you to see it. Now that you know the secret, let it be your guiding light. With every step, you are moving closer to the truth that nothing is missing from your life. You are already whole. As you begin to grasp the truth that nothing is missing from your life, a new understanding starts to emerge. The illusion of lacking begins to fade, and with it comes a profound realization. The fullness you've been seeking was never out there. It has always been here, in the present moment. The mind, so often trapped in thoughts of what's next, what's missing, or what's to come, begins to settle into the simplicity of now. And in this moment, you find wholeness not as something you need to chase, but as something you simply need to be aware of. Present moment awareness isn't just a technique or a concept. It's the foundation of peace, the key that unlocks the door to your inner contentment. It's the gateway to experiencing life fully, without distraction or longing. When we live with mindfulness, fully aware of each breath, each step, each interaction, we dissolve the persistent feeling that something is always missing. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't require anything external, only your attention, your presence, and your willingness to be fully here. The truth is, most of us spend our lives either regretting the past or worrying about the future, never fully inhabiting the moment we're in. We're either caught up in memories or anxieties, often so lost in these mental spaces that we miss the richness of the present. The thoughts we entertain about what could have been or what might be often cloud our perception, making us feel disconnected from what is happening right now. In this mental fog, we lose touch with life's true essence, and with it, we lose our ability to feel complete. But this is where mindfulness comes in, reminding us to return to the here and now, to the only place where life truly exists. By focusing on the present moment, we reconnect with life itself. This is not just about being aware of the world around us, but about engaging deeply with it. The Buddhist teachings on mindfulness encourage us to immerse ourselves in each moment, to experience it without judgment or distraction. This practice frees us from the mental noise that tells us we are lacking, and in doing so, it allows us to experience life's fullness exactly as it is. The more we embrace this moment, the more we realize that there is nothing missing. The present moment is complete in itself. There's nothing else to seek, because right now we have everything we need. When we become fully present, we also become aware of the impermanence of everything. The fleeting nature of life is no longer something to fear or resist, but something to accept with open arms. Mindfulness teaches us to observe life as it unfolds without trying to hold on to it, without wishing it were different. This acceptance of impermanence is a profound lesson in letting go. It frees us from the need to control or cling to anything in our lives, allowing us to flow with the rhythms of life instead of against them. And in that flow, we find that there is no lack, because everything is constantly changing and everything is part of a larger whole. This awareness does more than just release us from the tension of wanting more. It helps us see the richness of each moment, whether it's the simplest experience of drinking a cup of tea or having a conversation with a friend. Every action, no matter how ordinary, holds a depth of meaning when we approach it with full attention. The beauty of mindfulness is that it doesn't require us to change anything about our lives. It simply asks us to engage more deeply with what is already present. And in that engagement, we find a deeper connection to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. One of the most powerful aspects of mindfulness is that it teaches us to embrace life exactly as it is. So often, we resist what's happening in the present moment, wishing for things to be different, better, or more aligned with our expectations. But mindfulness shows us that by accepting the moment as it is, without judgment, without expectation, we open ourselves to the possibility of true peace. This peace doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from within, from the quiet space of acceptance. The practice of mindfulness is simple but profound. It begins with small steps, bringing your attention to your breath, feeling the sensation of your feet on the ground, listening fully when someone speaks to you. With each of these moments of awareness, you deepen your connection to the present. You stop living in the future and you stop living in the past. You begin to live in the only place that exists, now, and in this moment you are complete. As you continue to cultivate present moment awareness, you start to notice how often your mind drifts away from the here and now. The mind is like a river, constantly flowing towards the future or the past. But by practicing mindfulness, you can gently guide it back to the present moment over and over again. Each time you do this, you reclaim your power. You reclaim the fullness that was always available to you. This practice of returning to the present moment also helps us recognize that everything in life is interconnected. In Buddhist teachings, this interdependence is central to understanding the fullness of life. Nothing exists in isolation, and everything is part of a greater whole. The more present we are, the more we recognize our connection to all things, and in that recognition, we find a sense of belonging. We realize that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply connected to it. This awareness brings a deep sense of peace, because we understand that we are not alone in our experiences. We are part of something much larger, and this larger whole is complete in itself. Mindfulness also helps us see that we are not our thoughts. So often, we become identified with our thoughts, especially those that create a sense of lack or anxiety. But by practicing mindfulness, we begin to observe our thoughts as just that, thoughts. They come and go, but they do not define us. By recognizing this, we create space between ourselves and our thoughts, allowing us to let go of the ones that no longer serve us. And in that space, we find freedom. We find the ability to choose which thoughts we wish to hold on to and which ones we can let go of. And as we let go of the thoughts that create a sense of missing something, we make room for the fullness of the present moment to fill us. Another powerful aspect of present moment awareness is that it helps us cultivate gratitude. When we are truly present, we begin to see all the small blessings that exist in our lives, things we might have overlooked in our rush to get to the next thing. A warm cup of coffee, the sound of birds outside the window, the smile of a friend. These simple moments hold immense beauty when we are present with them. And as we notice these blessings, we begin to feel a deep sense of gratitude for what we have, right here and right now. This gratitude shifts our focus away from what's missing and towards what's already abundant in our lives. Present moment awareness also teaches us to let go of the need for perfection. So often, we believe that we are not enough, that we need to be something different, something better in order to be worthy. But mindfulness helps us see that we are already enough. There is nothing we need to change to be whole, because wholeness is found in the acceptance of the present moment. When we embrace the imperfections of life, we embrace the perfection of life itself. This acceptance allows us to experience a deeper sense of peace, because we are no longer chasing after some idealized version of ourselves or our lives. As you continue on this path of mindfulness, you may notice that the sense of lack, the feeling that something is missing, begins to fade. With each breath, each step, each moment of awareness, you become more and more attuned to the fullness that is already present in your life. You begin to see that everything you need is right here, right now. The future may still hold uncertainty, and the past may hold memories, but in this moment, you are complete. This journey of mindfulness is a lifelong practice. It's not something you achieve once and then move on from. It's a way of living, a way of being. And with each day, you'll find that you grow more and more at peace with the present moment, more and more aware of the richness that exists in your life just as it is. You will realize that nothing is missing, and in that realization, you will find the fullness of life you've been searching for. All along, it was here, waiting for you to notice. The power of present moment awareness is not a destination, it is a way of being, a state of mind that transforms your entire experience of life. When you become fully present, you awaken to the truth that everything you need is already here. You stop searching, stop chasing, and begin to simply live. And in that living, you find peace, contentment, and a sense of completeness that will carry you through every moment of your life. As you begin to experience the peace and completeness that comes with present moment awareness, a deeper truth starts to reveal itself, one that has been quietly shaping your life without you even realizing it. The idea that you are incomplete is not just an illusion caused by external circumstances or the things you think you're missing. It is also deeply tied to the ego, that part of you that constantly seeks validation, perfection, and control. As you have already seen, mindfulness allows you to experience life in its fullness, but there's another layer beneath this, the letting go of the ego. This is where true liberation lies. When you start to let go of the need to be something you're not, when you begin to accept yourself as you are, flaws and all the illusion of incompleteness begins to fade. The ego, which has convinced you that you need to be perfect, that you need to be admired, or that you need to have it all together, no longer holds the same power over you. And in that space of acceptance, you begin to realize that the perfection you've been searching for doesn't exist. It never did. It was only a creation of the mind, a product of the ego's desire to control and maintain an image. The liberation you seek comes when you step into imperfection and accept it as part of your true nature. Buddhist teachings help us understand that the ego thrives on comparison. It defines itself by external measures, wealth, status, accomplishments, and even the approval of others. This constant need to compare, to measure up to some idealized version of ourselves, is the root of suffering. The ego keeps you in a cycle of seeking approval and validation because it feels incomplete without it. But when you start to see this pattern, when you recognize that the ego is not your true self, you begin to experience freedom. The liberation you seek is not in changing yourself to fit some mold, but in accepting your true nature, your imperfections, and letting go of the false identity the ego has built for you. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you can observe how the ego operates. It's not something you can simply erase, but something you can understand and, over time, transcend. The ego will try to convince you that you need more to be whole, more success, more admiration, more approval. But as you let go of the need to satisfy these desires, you begin to feel lighter. You start to notice that the burden of constantly trying to measure up is not something you need to carry anymore. In the absence of the ego's demands, there is space for something much more fulfilling, a deep sense of inner peace. The Buddha spoke extensively about the nature of the self, or Atman. He taught that the self is not fixed, but is instead a fluid, ever-changing process. The ego, however, creates the illusion that you are a static, unchanging entity, needing to defend, protect, and assert itself. The more you cling to this idea of self, the more you feed the ego. But when you let go of this attachment to the self, you open up to the reality of impermanence. You begin to see that you are not defined by your achievements, your appearance, or your past. You are simply a collection of experiences, constantly shifting and evolving. Letting go of the ego is not about denying who you are, it's about understanding that the identity you've constructed is not the full picture of who you truly are. The ego limits you by convincing you that you are separate from others, that you are an individual isolated from the world around you. But Buddhism teaches that we are all interconnected, and that our sense of separateness is a construct of the mind. As you begin to shed this illusion, you will feel a deep sense of belonging to the world and to others. You no longer need to prove yourself or seek validation because you recognize that you are already whole as you are in this moment. The process of letting go of the ego is a gradual one. It starts with recognizing the ways in which the ego holds you back. This could be through feelings of jealousy, pride, or the need to compete. It may show up as a constant desire for external approval or a fear of failure. But once you begin to observe these patterns, you can begin to dismantle them. By practicing mindfulness, you can begin to see the ego for what it is, a temporary construct that doesn't define your true nature. With each moment of awareness, you begin to release your attachment to the ego, step by step. This doesn't mean you become passive or lose your sense of identity. Rather, it means that you stop identifying with the false narratives the ego creates. You stop seeing yourself as a collection of successes and failures, and instead, you begin to see yourself as part of the vast, interconnected whole of life. In this space, there is freedom, there is peace. You no longer need to chase after approval or validation because you realize that your worth is inherent, not something to be earned. You are already whole, just as you are. Embracing imperfection is an essential part of letting go of the ego. The ego thrives on perfection, on being seen as flawless or untouchable. But when you let go of the need to be perfect, you allow yourself to be fully human. You stop trying to present an image of yourself that matches societal expectations, and instead, you embrace the beautiful mess that is your life. You allow yourself to make mistakes, to learn, and to grow without the pressure of needing to be perfect. In this acceptance of imperfection, you discover true freedom, the freedom to be yourself, without the need for validation or approval. In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of non-self or anatta is central to understanding how letting go of the ego leads to liberation. Anatta teaches that there is no permanent, unchanging self. The self is an illusion, and the more you cling to it, the more you reinforce your sense of separateness. But when you begin to let go of this attachment to the ego, you open up to a deeper understanding of your true nature. You realize that you are not defined by your thoughts, your emotions, or your accomplishments. You are simply a part of the ever-changing flow of life. This understanding doesn't lead to a sense of loss, but to a profound sense of peace. You stop fighting against the world or against yourself, and instead, you begin to flow with life. The ego no longer controls you, and you are free to live in alignment with your true nature. You stop living in fear of what others think, and instead, you live with authenticity and openness. The process of letting go of the ego is also about letting go of judgment, both of others and of yourself. The ego is constantly judging, constantly comparing. It defines people based on their successes, their status, their appearance, or their behavior. But when you release the ego, you begin to see others with compassion and understanding. You no longer need to measure them against some idealized standard because you understand that everyone is on their own unique journey. You no longer see them as separate from you, but as fellow travelers on the path of life. And when you stop judging others, you stop judging yourself. You stop holding yourself to impossible standards of perfection, and you begin to embrace your flaws and imperfections. In this space of acceptance, you find peace. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth because you already know that you are enough, just as you are. You no longer need to chase after success, status, or approval because you realize that true fulfillment comes from within. This liberation is not something that happens overnight. It is a gradual process, one that takes time and patience. But with each moment of mindfulness, each act of self-compassion, each release of attachment, you move closer to the freedom that comes from letting go of the ego. You begin to see the truth that has always been there, that you are already whole, that you are enough, and that imperfection is not something to fear, but something to embrace. In this process, you discover that letting go of the ego doesn't diminish you, it expands you. You become more fully yourself, more connected to others, and more at peace with the world. You no longer need to prove anything, because you already know that you are enough. The ego's grip loosens, and in its place, you find liberation, the freedom to be imperfect, the freedom to be human, and the freedom to be at peace with who you are. As you begin to release the hold that the ego has on you, another powerful shift takes place, one that deepens your understanding of freedom. It's a subtle yet profound transition from the grasp of external forces to the profound peace found within. This shift, this freedom, comes through non-attachment. It's not just about letting go of things, it's about letting go of the expectations and desires that keep you tied to outcomes and approval. When you free yourself from attachment, you no longer seek validation from the world around you. Instead, you find a deep sense of fulfillment that exists entirely within. The freedom of non-attachment doesn't mean abandoning your desires or your goals. It doesn't mean you stop caring about your loved ones, your work, or your aspirations. Instead, it means releasing the need to cling to them, the need to have them in order to feel whole. It means you can pursue your dreams, love deeply, and engage fully in life, but without the desperation that comes from believing that your happiness depends on achieving these things. Non-attachment teaches you to approach life with openness, to love without holding on, and to experience the world without trying to control it. When you are attached to outcomes, whether they are big or small, you are setting yourself up for a cycle of frustration and disappointment. Why? Because life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. The things we desire, the people we depend on, the circumstances we hope for, none of these are guaranteed. When we place all of our happiness on a future event or a specific outcome, we live in constant anxiety, always waiting for the next thing to bring us peace. Non-attachment frees us from this cycle. It teaches us to release the tight grip we have on life and to flow with it instead of resisting it. Buddhist teachings explain that attachment comes from a deep-seated desire for permanence in an impermanent world. We want things to stay the same. We want to control our experiences. But when we release this desire, we begin to understand the true nature of life, its ever-changing, fleeting nature. This doesn't make life any less valuable. In fact, once we accept impermanence and release attachment, we experience life with a new depth of appreciation. We no longer cling to the idea that we can hold on to moments forever. Instead, we savor them as they come, knowing that they are precious precisely because they are temporary. When you practice non-attachment, you stop living in the future or the past. You stop basing your happiness on the idea that something else needs to happen before you can be at peace. You learn to embrace the present moment as it is, without adding layers of expectation or judgment. You stop seeking happiness outside yourself, and you begin to see that everything you need is already within. Non-attachment is about freedom from the desire to control your life, your relationships, or your environment. When you let go of the need for control, you open yourself up to the possibility of a much deeper peace, one that isn't dependent on circumstances. This freedom isn't just mental, it's emotional too. The more you release your attachment to people and outcomes, the more you allow yourself to experience life with an open heart. You stop looking for people to complete you, and instead, you learn to find fulfillment within yourself. Relationships become a source of joy rather than neediness, and you find that love grows more when it's free from expectations. Non-attachment to people doesn't mean detaching from love or affection. Rather, it means loving without dependence, without expecting anything in return. This is one of the deepest forms of freedom you can experience. In Buddhist practice, non-attachment is closely tied to the concept of letting go. Letting go doesn't mean you forget or abandon. It means you release your emotional and mental hold on something or someone. It means you accept that you cannot control everything in life, and that peace comes from surrendering to the flow of existence. This release is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of inner strength. Letting go allows you to fully experience life without the burden of expectation or fear of loss. And, in that space, you discover that everything you need to be complete is already inside you. When you begin to let go of attachment, you notice something remarkable happens. The pressure to be or do something specific diminishes. You no longer feel the weight of needing to prove yourself. You stop measuring your worth against external standards. Instead, you find a deep sense of fulfillment in simply being. This doesn't mean you stop striving or working toward your goals, but the energy with which you approach life shifts. You no longer act out of desperation or fear of not measuring up. You act out of a place of calm and inner security, knowing that your worth isn't determined by any outcome. This freedom from attachment also transforms how you deal with failure or disappointment. Instead of viewing these experiences as devastating setbacks, you see them as opportunities for growth. Non-attachment helps you navigate life's challenges with resilience. You understand that failure is not the end of the road, but rather a natural part of the process. When you're no longer attached to a specific outcome, you're able to embrace life's unpredictability and trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. One of the most profound ways non-attachment impacts our lives is in how we relate to our own desires. Often, we are driven by a need to fulfill our desires, to accumulate more, to reach higher, to prove something. But non-attachment teaches us to examine our desires, to question whether they are truly aligned with our highest good or whether they are simply distractions, feeding into the ego's need for validation. When we let go of the attachment to external desires, we create space for a deeper, more authentic sense of fulfillment, one that is not dictated by society's standards or by our ego's demands. In this way, we begin to live in harmony with ourselves, free from the constant pressure of needing more. The beauty of non-attachment is that it doesn't require you to let go of your passions, your dreams, or your ambitions. It simply asks you to let go of the need to control how these things unfold. It's about releasing the emotional and mental grip on the future, the need to make things happen in a particular way, and trusting in the natural unfolding of life. Non-attachment allows you to move through life with an open heart, embracing what comes without fear, without resistance. You still strive, but you do so with a sense of ease, knowing that the process is just as important as the outcome. When you let go of the attachment to outcomes, you create room for joy in the process itself. You stop rushing toward the next thing, and instead, you savor the journey. Non-attachment teaches you that there is fulfillment in every step you take, not just in reaching a particular destination. Life becomes a beautiful unfolding where each moment holds its own worth, its own beauty. The freedom that comes with letting go of expectations is the freedom to live fully in the present, to enjoy the richness of each moment without the constant worry about what comes next. Non-attachment also teaches you to embrace uncertainty. So often, we hold on tightly to the illusion of control because we fear the unknown. We want things to go a certain way because it feels safer, more predictable. But when you let go of attachment, you also let go of the need to control the future. You open yourself to the unknown, trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to. This acceptance of uncertainty is one of the most liberating aspects of non-attachment. It frees you from the anxiety of needing things to be a certain way and opens you up to the endless possibilities that life has to offer. At its core, non-attachment is about understanding that happiness is not dependent on anything outside of yourself. It's not about the things you have, the people around you, or the achievements you accumulate. It's about the peace that comes from within, from knowing that you are already complete, already whole. Non-attachment is not a rejection of the world. It's a deeper engagement with it, free from the need for control. It's about living fully in each moment, without the fear of loss or the need for more. As you continue to practice non-attachment, you begin to experience a profound shift in how you live your life. You start to feel more grounded, more at peace, and more connected to your true self. You stop seeking fulfillment outside of yourself, and instead, you begin to realize that everything you need is already within you. This is the true freedom that non-attachment offers. The freedom to be fully yourself, to live without fear or expectation, and to experience life as it is, without the burden of attachment to outcomes. As you begin to experience the profound freedom that comes from letting go of attachments, a new possibility emerges. You start to realize that contentment doesn't come from acquiring more, from reaching a new milestone, or from meeting external expectations. Contentment is not something you stumble upon by chance. It is a practice, a way of being that grows within. It is not a fleeting emotion that arises from external circumstances, but a deep, abiding satisfaction that comes from within, regardless of what's happening around you. This is the essence of true peace, the understanding that joy and contentment are cultivated from within, and they are always available to you when you choose to embrace them. Contentment, as seen through the lens of Buddhist teachings, is not about complacency or resignation. It is not about giving up on your dreams or desires. Rather, it is about finding peace in the present moment, accepting life as it is, and realizing that you are already whole without needing anything more. In a world that constantly tells us to strive, to achieve, and to acquire, this understanding of contentment may feel like a radical shift, but it is, in fact, the path to lasting happiness. The Buddha's teachings on contentment are deeply rooted in mindfulness and gratitude. They invite us to recognize the richness of life in its simplest forms. So often, we chase after happiness by looking for it outside of ourselves, believing that we need something more possessions, more success, more approval. But as you've seen, The true essence of contentment doesn't rely on external circumstances. It is found in the present moment, in fully experiencing what's in front of you, and in cultivating a deep sense of appreciation for what you already have. One of the central aspects of cultivating contentment is learning to let go of the constant desire for more. This doesn't mean you stop pursuing your goals or aspirations, but rather you begin to live in a way that frees you from the constant need to fill a perceived gap. You begin to realize that everything you seek is already within you. When you stop attaching your happiness to an outcome or external achievement, you allow space for genuine contentment to emerge. The Buddhists call this the practice of sufficiency, recognizing that you already have enough in this moment. This awareness helps break the cycle of always wanting more, which can lead to dissatisfaction and frustration. A key practice in Buddhism for cultivating contentment is mindfulness. Being mindful allows you to fully experience each moment as it is, without judgment or expectation. When you practice mindfulness, you stop rushing through life, constantly waiting for the next thing to bring you happiness. Instead, you engage with the present moment deeply and completely. Whether you are eating, walking, or having a conversation, mindfulness teaches you to appreciate the beauty and the simplicity of each experience. In this way, contentment is not something to be pursued in the future, it is something to be realized right now, in every small detail of life. Alongside mindfulness, gratitude plays a pivotal role in cultivating contentment. When you consciously practice gratitude, you shift your focus away from what you don't have and direct it toward what you do have. Gratitude invites you to notice the abundance that already exists in your life, whether it's the warmth of the sun on your skin, the support of loved ones, or simply the gift of being alive. This practice of appreciation is not about ignoring life's challenges, but rather about finding the good in every situation, no matter how small. By focusing on what you are grateful for, you naturally shift your mindset away from scarcity and towards abundance. And in this shift, contentment naturally arises. Contentment also involves a deep acceptance of what is, rather than a constant desire for things to be different. We often find ourselves frustrated when life doesn't go as planned, when things don't turn out the way we hoped, or when we face challenges. But Buddhism teaches that true contentment comes when we let go of our attachment to how life should be, and instead embrace how life is. This acceptance of reality without judgment or resistance frees us from the suffering that comes from trying to control things beyond our power. The practice of acceptance does not mean passivity. It means acknowledging life as it is and finding peace within it. It means accepting that change is inevitable, that things may not always go your way, but trusting that every experience, good or bad, is an opportunity for growth. In addition to mindfulness, gratitude, and acceptance, the Buddhist concept of equanimity is also essential for cultivating contentment. Equanimity refers to the ability to remain balanced and calm, no matter what life presents. It is the art of maintaining inner peace, regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity allows you to experience joy without becoming overly attached to it, and to face difficulties without being thrown off balance. This practice of emotional stability frees you from the roller coaster of fluctuating emotions, and instead, you learn to remain grounded in the knowledge that everything, whether good or bad, is temporary. With equanimity, you stop letting external events dictate your internal state, and instead, you choose to remain peaceful and centered. Cultivating contentment is also about releasing the need to compare yourself to others. So much of our dissatisfaction comes from the tendency to measure ourselves against the success, possessions, or happiness of others. Social media, for example, often presents an idealized version of life, which can lead us to feel that we are lacking in some way. But the truth is, comparison always leads to suffering. It either makes us feel superior or inferior, neither of which leads to peace. When you stop comparing yourself to others and start embracing your unique journey, you begin to realize that your worth is not defined by anyone else's life. Contentment comes when you stop looking outside for validation and start appreciating the path you are on exactly as it is. Another vital component of contentment in Buddhism is the understanding of impermanence. Everything in life is in constant flux. Nothing lasts forever. Relationships, success, possessions, feelings, all are temporary. When we understand this, we begin to let go of the need to hold on to anything too tightly. We accept that all things will change, and in that acceptance, we find peace. This awareness of impermanence helps us to appreciate the present moment more fully, because we know that it will pass, just as all moments do. By recognizing that nothing is permanent, we learn to enjoy life for what it is, without clinging to it. This is a key practice in finding contentment. Buddhism teaches us that contentment is not a destination, but a journey. It is a practice that requires continual cultivation and a willingness to look inward. It is about finding satisfaction in each moment, no matter how simple, and realizing that the key to happiness lies not in obtaining more, but in accepting what is already here. As you continue to embrace the Buddhist principles of mindfulness, gratitude, and acceptance, you will find that contentment becomes more natural. You will stop looking for happiness in external circumstances, and instead, you will start to see that it was always within you. Ultimately, contentment is about realizing that you are enough. You do not need to change, to acquire, or to achieve in order to find peace. You already have everything you need. It's a way of living that invites you to embrace life exactly as it is, to find beauty in every moment, and to trust that joy is not something you must chase, it is something you can cultivate from within. With each practice of mindfulness, each expression of gratitude, and each moment of acceptance, contentment grows deeper and deeper, and you begin to experience life as a beautiful unfolding, exactly as it should be. As you continue on this journey of cultivating contentment, you begin to realize that there is something deeper at play, a truth that quietly underlies every moment of mindfulness. In the search for fulfillment, we often find ourselves looking outside for the answers, believing that happiness, peace, or purpose lies in the things we do or acquire. Yet, as you've already experienced, true fulfillment doesn't come from seeking, it comes from being. When we stop searching outside ourselves and begin to tune into the quiet presence of the here and now, we discover that everything we seek, joy, peace, love, purpose, has always been inside us. This shift, from a life of seeking to a life of being, is the mindful path to fulfillment. The key to understanding this transformation lies in the practice of mindfulness. At its core, mindfulness is the art of being fully present in the moment. It is the ability to experience life as it unfolds, without the constant distraction of the past or future. This practice teaches us to stop chasing after external sources of happiness or fulfillment and instead recognize that everything we need is already within us. The more we engage with life in this way, the more we uncover a deep sense of contentment, wholeness that is independent of our circumstances. The life of seeking is one that constantly strives for more. It is a life focused on what is missing, on what needs to be attained. We spend our time pursuing success, approval, possessions, and experiences, hoping that each new achievement will finally bring us the fulfillment we desire. Yet, even when we get what we want, the satisfaction is often short-lived, and we find ourselves searching again. The cycle continues, seeking, attaining, and then seeking once more until we are exhausted, never fully satisfied. This endless chase keeps us stuck in a pattern of dissatisfaction because the truth is, no external thing can provide lasting fulfillment. But mindfulness offers a different path. It teaches us that fulfillment is not something to be obtained. Instead, it is something to be realized. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to connect with the present moment, with ourselves, and with the world around us. In that connection, we begin to feel a sense of wholeness that doesn't depend on anything external. We realize that everything we are seeking is already inside of us, waiting to be discovered. The practice of mindfulness helps us peel away the layers of distraction, expectation, and desire that cloud our perception, allowing us to see clearly that true fulfillment is not something to be earned, but something to be experienced in each moment. This shift from seeking to being is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. It requires consistent mindfulness and self-awareness. As you cultivate mindfulness, you start to notice how often you look for happiness outside of yourself. You begin to see the moments when you're chasing after approval, success, or possessions, and you become aware of how these external pursuits often leave you feeling empty. But with mindfulness, you also begin to realize that the pursuit itself is not the problem. It's the belief that fulfillment can only come through achieving these things. When you stop attaching your happiness to external results, you open yourself up to the possibility that true fulfillment comes from within, and you start to feel it in the very fabric of your being. The practice of mindfulness reveals that everything you need for fulfillment is already here, in the present moment. This is a profound shift in perspective. We often look ahead, thinking that fulfillment is just beyond our reach, waiting for the right circumstances or achievements to fall into place. But mindfulness teaches us that fulfillment is already available in the now, in every moment, in every breath. The more we focus on the present, the more we recognize the richness of our own experience. In this awareness, we start to see that nothing is missing. We are already whole, already complete. We have everything we need right here, right now. As you continue to deepen your mindfulness practice, you begin to let go of the need to define yourself by what you have or what you do. The seeking mind constantly measures success, but the being mind simply experiences. This transformation from doing to being allows you to experience life in a new way, free from judgment, free from the need for validation, and free from the fear of missing out. You begin to live in a way that is not driven by external pressures or desires, but by an inner sense of peace and purpose. This is not to say that you no longer have goals or aspirations, but rather that your sense of fulfillment is no longer tied to achieving them. You can pursue your passions and dreams, but you do so from a place of wholeness, not from the need to complete yourself. The mindful path to fulfillment also involves embracing impermanence. As you practice mindfulness, you become more aware of the fleeting nature of everything: your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, and even your desires. Everything changes, and nothing lasts forever. But this awareness is not a source of anxiety. Instead, it frees you from the need to hold on to things. You no longer need to control your experiences because you understand that each moment is precious precisely because it is temporary. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to feel fulfilled, because every moment has its own beauty and value. The practice of mindfulness teaches you to appreciate the transitory nature of life, to savor each moment as it comes, and to let go of the desire for things to remain the same. In this acceptance of impermanence, you find a deeper sense of peace. Another critical aspect of mindfulness is self-compassion. As you embrace the present moment, you also learn to embrace yourself with kindness and understanding. So often, we judge ourselves for not being enough, not thin enough, not successful enough, not spiritual enough. These judgments keep us trapped in the cycle of seeking, But mindfulness teaches us to treat ourselves with the same compassion we would offer a dear friend. When we stop judging ourselves and start accepting ourselves as we are, we open the door to true fulfillment. We realize that we are worthy of love, peace, and happiness, not because of what we do or achieve, but simply because we are. This practice of self-compassion naturally leads to a deeper sense of connection with others. As you become more mindful of your own experience, you also become more attuned to the experiences of those around you. You begin to see others not as competitors or sources of validation, but as fellow travelers on the journey of life. This sense of connection brings a profound sense of fulfillment because you no longer feel isolated or alone in your struggles. You realize that we are all part of the same human experience, and that the joy and fulfillment you seek can be found in the shared moments of life. The mindful path to fulfillment also teaches us to let go of our attachment to outcomes. So often, we tie our happiness to the belief that we must reach a certain destination, whether it's a career goal, a financial target, or a personal achievement. But mindfulness teaches us that happiness is not dependent on any particular result. True fulfillment comes from the process, from engaging fully with each moment, regardless of the outcome. When we let go of our attachment to results, we free ourselves from the pressure of needing to succeed. We can engage with life without fear of failure, knowing that the experience itself is the reward. This shift in perspective is one of the most liberating aspects of mindfulness. The mindful path to fulfillment is not about becoming someone you are not. It is about embracing who you are, exactly as you are, and realizing that everything you need to feel whole is already within you. This is the core of mindfulness. The recognition that fulfillment is not something you need to chase, but something you can experience in each moment. As you continue on this path, you will find that life becomes less about striving and more about being. You will experience each moment with greater clarity, peace, and joy. And you will realize that true fulfillment is not found in achieving more, but in simply being present with what is. In every breath, every thought, every action, you will begin to discover that fulfillment is not something to be sought outside of you, but something to be experienced right here, right now. And as you deepen your mindfulness practice, you will uncover a sense of wholeness that is not dependent on circumstances, achievements, or the approval of others. It is the deep understanding that you are already complete and that everything you seek is already within you. This is the transformative power of mindfulness, a power that leads to a life of fulfillment, not through seeking, but through being. As you continue on this path of self-discovery, you start to understand a profound truth that reshapes everything you thought you knew about fulfillment. So far, you've learned that happiness doesn't come from external achievements or possessions, but rather from within, from embracing the present moment and cultivating mindfulness. Now, there's an even deeper layer to explore, one that reveals how everything you need for a truly fulfilling life is already right here, in your relationships, in your surroundings, in the very fabric of your existence. This truth is rooted in the Buddhist teaching of interdependence, the understanding that everything in the universe is interconnected, and that our happiness and fulfillment arise from this vast web of relationships. The concept of interdependence is at the heart of Buddhist philosophy. It suggests that nothing exists in isolation. Everything, our thoughts, actions, emotions, and even the world around us is connected in ways we may not always see, but are always felt. This interconnectedness means that we are never truly separate from the world we inhabit. Each moment, each person, and every experience is part of the larger whole that contributes to our sense of fulfillment. When you begin to realize this, you understand that the sense of lacking, the feeling that you are incomplete, is based on the illusion of separation. The truth is, you are not alone in your journey. You are deeply connected to everything around you. This realization of interdependence doesn't just change how you view the world, it changes how you experience it. When you see that everything is connected, you begin to appreciate the small things you once took for granted. You notice how your actions, however small, impact the world around you. You see how your relationships, your environment, and even the people you meet in passing are part of the greater network of life that supports and nourishes you. It is through these connections that fulfillment becomes possible. You are not alone in seeking happiness. It is embedded in the very structure of existence itself. Buddhism teaches that when we understand interdependence, we begin to see that all things are in constant flow. We are not static beings, but part of a dynamic, interconnected web. The things we need, love, support, growth, peace, are not separate from us, but present in the world around us, waiting to be noticed and embraced. Everything we need to feel fulfilled is already here, embedded in our relationships, our environment, and the world itself. Fulfillment is not something we need to chase, it's something we need to recognize in the connections we already have. One of the most powerful aspects of interdependence is that it frees us from the idea of self-sufficiency. The modern world often encourages us to believe that we must be independent, that we must do everything on our own to succeed or be fulfilled. This belief leads to isolation and exhaustion. But the Buddhist view of interdependence teaches us that we are not meant to do everything by ourselves. We are meant to live in relationship with others, to support and be supported, to give and receive in a natural, balanced flow. The more we recognize this interconnectedness, the more we realize that true fulfillment comes not from self-reliance, but from embracing the support and connection that life offers us. This interdependence doesn't just apply to our relationships with others, it extends to everything around us, the natural world, the things we use in our daily lives, and even the thoughts and emotions we experience. Everything is part of the same vast web of existence, and our happiness is nourished by the relationships we have with all things. When we recognize that we are not separate from the world, we begin to see how everything we need is already present. The earth provides for us, the people around us offer us companionship and wisdom, and our own minds and hearts hold the potential for growth and transformation. Understanding interdependence also leads us to a more compassionate and mindful way of living. When you realize that everything is connected, you begin to treat others with more care and respect. You understand that the actions of one person affect the whole, and that your own actions have a ripple effect that reaches far beyond your immediate surroundings. You no longer see others as separate from yourself, but as part of the same interconnected web. This understanding naturally leads to greater empathy, kindness, and a desire to contribute positively to the world around you. In practical terms, recognizing interdependence shifts your perspective on how you engage with life. Instead of viewing fulfillment as something you must achieve on your own, you begin to see it as something that arises naturally from your interactions with the world. The people in your life, the experiences you encounter, and even the simple moments of daily life are all opportunities to connect and find fulfillment. You no longer need to chase after external markers of success because you begin to see that fulfillment is found in the connections you nurture, the care you give, and the moments of presence you share. This shift in perspective is profound. It changes how you approach your relationships, your work, and your life's purpose. When you recognize the interconnectedness of all things, you begin to see that every moment is an opportunity for fulfillment. It's not about waiting for something to happen or seeking something outside of yourself. It's about opening your eyes to the abundance that already exists in the form of the people, experiences, and relationships that surround you. You start to realize that everything you need is already here, already available, waiting for you to acknowledge it. The teachings of interdependence also help us understand the nature of suffering. Often, we experience suffering because we believe we are isolated, that we are alone in our struggles. We feel separate from others, and as a result, we feel disconnected from the support and compassion available to us. But when we understand interdependence, we begin to see that our suffering is not separate from the world. It is part of the shared human experience. Our struggles are not isolated events, they are part of the larger flow of life. And in recognizing this, we also recognize that our healing, our peace, and our fulfillment are part of that same flow. Just as we are connected in our suffering, so too are we connected in our joy. In Buddhist teachings, this interconnectedness is often described as dependent origination, the idea that everything arises in dependence upon other factors. Nothing exists in isolation, and everything is interrelated. Our happiness, our fulfillment, and our suffering all arise in relation to the world around us. When we realize this, we stop seeing ourselves as separate entities struggling to survive. We begin to see ourselves as part of the vast, interwoven fabric of existence. And in doing so, we find the support and connection that leads to true fulfillment. This understanding also leads us to a deeper appreciation of the present moment. When you realize that everything is interconnected, you begin to see how every experience, no matter how small, is a part of a larger whole. Each moment is not isolated. It is part of a continuous flow of cause and effect. The more present you are, the more you can see the interconnectedness of all things, and the more you begin to appreciate the richness of life as it unfolds. You no longer need to search for fulfillment, because you begin to realize that it is already present in the very fabric of your existence. As you continue to explore the teachings of interdependence, you start to see that fulfillment is not something you can force or control. It arises naturally when you recognize your connection to everything around you. The more you embrace this interconnectedness, the more you experience a sense of wholeness and peace. You realize that you are never alone in your journey, that everything you need for fulfillment is already here, in the relationships you nurture, the environment you inhabit, and the experiences that shape your life. This realization brings with it a deep sense of gratitude. You begin to appreciate the people in your life, the moments of connection, and the opportunities for growth that come your way. You recognize that fulfillment is not something you need to chase or acquire. It is something that naturally arises from the web of connections that make up your life. When you live with this awareness, every moment becomes an opportunity for fulfillment. You no longer need to search for happiness, because you understand that it is always available to you in the connections you share with the world. Everything you need, everything you desire, is already here. And in this understanding, you find peace. As we begin to recognize the interconnectedness of all things and understand that everything we need for fulfillment already exists within our relationships and the world around us, we come to a deeper realization. The key to lasting fulfillment is not found in what we are striving for, nor in what we think is missing from our lives. It is found right here, in the present moment. This is where Buddhist teachings offer a profound shift, showing us that true completeness is not something we need to chase, but something we can discover now, in the here and now. In each breath, in each experience, in every small moment, there lies a depth of peace and fulfillment waiting for us to simply be with it. The concept of the present moment is central to Buddhist philosophy. It teaches that everything we seek, peace, happiness, purpose, is already within us, available in the present, not in some distant future or past experience. The search for meaning often keeps us looking ahead, thinking that the next achievement, the next step, will bring us what we need. But the more we live in that mindset, the more we miss the richness that life has to offer right now. The present moment is the only time we truly have, and it is here, in its fullness, that we find the peace we have been searching for all along. Buddhism teaches us to embrace the present with full awareness, to be completely here, and in doing so, we experience a sense of completeness and peace that comes from simply being. When we are fully present, we break free from the constant cycle of wanting and waiting for something else to come. We stop believing that we are incomplete, and instead, we recognize that all the pieces of fulfillment are already here. The present moment, with all its simplicity and impermanence, offers everything we need to feel whole. But to truly experience this, we must let go of the distractions of the mind, the worries about the future, the regrets about the past, and simply engage with life as it unfolds. This is not about doing more or achieving more. It's about being fully aware of what is already here, in this moment. Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness as a path to experiencing the present moment. Mindfulness isn't just about being aware. It's about being fully immersed in the now, without judgment or distraction. When we practice mindfulness, we are training ourselves to focus our attention on the present and to experience it fully, without the interference of thoughts that pull us in different directions. This practice teaches us that fulfillment is not found in what we have or what we will achieve, but in the depth of our experience of the present. Every moment is an opportunity to tap into this deep sense of presence, and in that presence, we find completeness. One of the most powerful aspects of embracing the present moment is realizing that nothing is missing when we are fully here. Our minds often trick us into believing that we need something more success, more love, more possessions to be happy. But the truth is, everything we need for peace and fulfillment is already available to us, right here, right now. The Buddha's teachings remind us that the present moment holds everything we need to feel whole, if only we can let go of the mental distractions that tell us otherwise. This doesn't mean that the present moment is always easy to embrace. Life is filled with challenges, struggles, and uncertainties. But Buddhism teaches us that these moments are part of the present too, and by accepting them as they are, without resistance or judgment, we find peace. When we try to control the present moment or make it fit our expectations, we miss the fullness of what is. Instead, we must learn to surrender to the present as it is, embracing both the joyful and difficult moments without needing to escape or change them. In this acceptance, we begin to experience the completeness that is always available when we are fully here. Living in the present moment also requires letting go of our attachment to the past and the future. Our past experiences, both positive and negative, often shape how we view ourselves and the world. We may hold on to past mistakes or successes, letting them define us. Similarly, we often live in the future, constantly planning, worrying, or hoping for something better. But both the past and future are illusions. They are not real in the way that the present moment is. By releasing our attachment to what was and what could be, we open ourselves to the richness of the now. The present moment is where life is happening. It is where we can find peace, connection, and fulfillment, but only if we are willing to be present with it. This practice of being fully present also helps us cultivate a sense of gratitude. When we are mindful, we begin to notice the small things that we often overlook: the warmth of the sun, the sound of a bird singing, the comfort of a kind word. These simple experiences are full of beauty and richness, but we often miss them because our minds are preoccupied with the past or the future. When we embrace the present, we begin to see the abundance of life as it is, and this recognition naturally brings us a sense of gratitude. We begin to appreciate the moments that make up our lives, and in that appreciation, we find fulfillment. Living fully in the present also teaches us to embrace impermanence. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is the idea that everything is transient, nothing lasts forever. This truth is often unsettling as we desire stability and permanence. But when we truly accept impermanence, we begin to see the beauty in change. Every moment is unique, and in its fleeting nature, it becomes even more precious. When we embrace impermanence, we stop holding on to things, trying to make them last, and instead, we learn to experience them fully while they are here. This acceptance of the transient nature of life allows us to find peace in the present, knowing that everything, whether joyful or painful, is part of the flow of life. This understanding of impermanence also frees us from the fear of loss. We often fear losing things, people, experiences, even our own youth. But when we embrace impermanence, we realize that loss is simply part of the natural flow of life. We don't need to hold on to things in order to feel secure or fulfilled, because the present moment, in its impermanence, is always offering us something new. By letting go of our attachment to what we think we need, we open ourselves up to the richness of the now, fully experiencing whatever it brings. The present moment also teaches us to be more compassionate toward ourselves and others. When we are truly present, we are no longer caught up in the judgments of the past or the anxieties about the future. We begin to see others and ourselves as we truly are, without the filters of comparison, expectation, or regret. This clarity allows us to respond to ourselves and others with greater kindness and understanding. Compassion grows naturally when we live in the present, because we are no longer distracted by the stories we tell ourselves about who we should be or who others should be. We see life as it is, and in that seeing, we are more able to extend love and kindness to ourselves and those around us. Being present also means accepting ourselves as we are, without needing to change or become something else. So often, we feel inadequate, like we are not enough, and we think that happiness will come once we change. But when we are fully present, we realize that we are already enough. In each moment, in each breath, we are complete. This acceptance of ourselves and of life as it is, in its imperfect beauty, brings a profound sense of peace. We no longer feel the need to fix or change anything. We simply experience life as it is, with all its beauty and complexity. True fulfillment comes from embracing the present moment fully. It is not something we need to chase or achieve, but something that we can realize right here, right now. When we stop looking outside of ourselves for what we think is missing, we begin to see that everything we need is already here. The present moment is the only moment we truly have, and in it we find the peace and fulfillment that we have been seeking all along. This understanding is a transformative shift, one that allows us to live with greater clarity, joy, and peace, simply by being fully present in each moment. As you deepen your understanding of the present moment and embrace the fullness of life as it is, another essential realization begins to take shape, one that challenges our usual perception of what is missing. It's a realization rooted in the Buddhist concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything changes, that nothing stays the same, and that nothing is ever truly lost. In our world, we often perceive change as a loss. When something is gone, we feel as though we are left with less. But in reality, change is not a loss. It is the very essence of life. It is the flow of life, offering us continuous opportunities for growth, renewal, and transformation. And, by understanding impermanence, we begin to see that what we once believed was lost was never truly gone. It has merely transformed, giving way to new possibilities. In Buddhism, impermanence is seen as a natural law of existence. Everything in life is in constant flux. Our thoughts, our emotions, our relationships, and even the world around us. Nothing remains the same. When we accept this truth, we free ourselves from the fear and sadness that often come with change. Instead of seeing change as something that takes away from us, we learn to see it as something that adds to us, offering us the chance to experience life in a new way. Nothing is ever lost, because everything is always in the process of transformation, leading to abundance in ways we may not immediately understand. One of the most powerful shifts that occurs when we embrace impermanence is a change in how we view loss. When something ends, whether it's a relationship, a job, or even a phase of life, we often feel as though we are missing something essential. But Buddhism teaches us that loss is not the end. It is simply a change in form, a part of the constant cycle of life. The idea that something is missing often comes from our attachment to things as they are, our desire for permanence in a world that is constantly shifting. When we let go of the need to hold on to the past or to control the future, we open ourselves to the possibility of seeing abundance in what remains. Change, when viewed through the lens of impermanence, invites us to appreciate the fluid nature of life. Nothing is fixed, and that is where the beauty lies. It is through change that we grow, that we learn, that we evolve. We are not defined by our past, by what we have lost, or by what we think is missing. Instead, we are defined by our ability to adapt, to embrace the flow of life, and to find abundance in the spaces that change creates. The more we embrace impermanence, the more we recognize that nothing is ever truly gone. What we lose simply transforms into something new. This understanding of impermanence is also freeing. When we stop clinging to the past or fearing the future, we realize that life is always offering us opportunities for new experiences, new relationships, and new perspectives. Every ending is a beginning, and in every change, there is the potential for greater abundance. We are not bound by what was. We are free to explore what is and what could be. In that freedom, we find fulfillment, not in holding on to what we've lost, but in opening ourselves to what is still to come. Embracing impermanence also shifts our perspective on time. Instead of viewing time as something that slips away, leaving us with a sense of scarcity, we begin to see it as a fluid force that constantly renews itself. Time becomes a resource that is always available to us, unfolding in each moment. We stop seeing time as something to fear or control, and instead, we learn to experience each moment fully, knowing that it will pass, and in its passing, it will give way to something new. This awareness allows us to let go of the pressure to achieve everything at once, to fill every moment with purpose, and to simply allow life to unfold as it will. In Buddhist teachings, the acceptance of impermanence is not just an intellectual understanding, but a deep, lived experience. To truly embrace impermanence, we must allow ourselves to feel the emotions that come with change. It's natural to grieve when something ends or when something we care about slips away. But Buddhism teaches us that it's through the process of letting go, through the release of attachment, that we find peace. Change is inevitable, but our ability to accept it with grace and awareness is what allows us to see the abundance in what remains. In this way, we find joy not in the things we hold on to, but in the freedom to experience the full richness of life as it unfolds. The practice of mindfulness is integral to embracing impermanence. Mindfulness allows us to stay present with each moment without attachment or judgment. It teaches us to observe life as it is, without trying to control or resist the changes that come our way. When we cultivate mindfulness, we can begin to see how everything, from our emotions to our experiences, is in constant flux. Instead of reacting to change with fear or resistance, we learn to observe it with acceptance and understanding. In this awareness, we begin to see that there is no need to cling to the past or hold on to things that are no longer serving us. We can release them, knowing that they were part of our journey, and that their transformation makes space for new experiences to enter our lives. One of the most transformative aspects of embracing impermanence is that it shifts our relationship with the concept of loss. Loss often feels like an absence, a void that cannot be filled. But when we understand that nothing is ever truly lost, we begin to see that every ending is simply a transformation. The people, experiences, and things we once held dear are never gone. They continue to live on in the lessons they taught us, the memories they created, and the ways they shaped us. What we lose is not something that diminishes us. It is something that contributes to our growth. In this way, impermanence teaches us to honor what we've had without clinging to it. We can cherish the past without being consumed by it. And in doing so, we free ourselves to fully embrace the present. The Buddhist concept of impermanence also helps us to see the abundance in what we have right now. When we stop focusing on what we don't have or what we think we need, we begin to appreciate what is already present. Change teaches us that nothing lasts forever, and in that awareness, we realize the preciousness of each moment. Each experience, no matter how small, becomes an opportunity for joy. We no longer need to seek out happiness in external accomplishments or possessions. We learn to find it in the richness of our present experience. The realization that nothing is permanent frees us from the need to hold on to things, and instead we begin to enjoy them fully, knowing that they are a part of the ever-changing flow of life. In embracing impermanence, we also let go of the need to control life. When we accept that change is inevitable, we stop trying to hold on to the things that we fear losing. We stop trying to make life fit our expectations, and instead, we allow it to unfold as it is meant to. This release of control brings a sense of peace, because we no longer feel the need to fight against life's natural flow. We can flow with it, trusting that each change brings new opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. In this way, impermanence becomes a source of abundance rather than loss. When we come to terms with impermanence, we see that life is constantly offering us opportunities for renewal. Each moment, each experience, is an invitation to grow, to learn, and to become more fully ourselves. Nothing is ever truly lost, because everything is always transforming, always becoming. What seems like loss today may become the foundation for something new tomorrow. We are not trapped by the past or bound by our future expectations. Instead, we are free to experience the fullness of life as it unfolds. And in that fullness, we find the abundance that comes from embracing change, letting go of attachment, and trusting in the ever-present flow of life. By embracing impermanence, we unlock the freedom to live fully in the present. We stop searching for fulfillment in the future or the past, and instead, we begin to experience the richness of life right now. Everything we need is already here. Change leads to abundance, and in embracing change, we find peace, joy, and wholeness in every moment. As you continue to explore the profound teachings of impermanence and the interconnectedness of all things, you begin to realize that the search for fulfillment is not a quest that takes you somewhere distant, it's a journey inward. We've learned that everything you need for peace and happiness is already available in the present moment, in the people around you, and in your experiences. But there's one essential practice that helps us unlock this truth, one that brings clarity to the realization that we are already whole as we are. That practice is meditation. In Buddhism, meditation serves as a mirror, reflecting back to us the truth of our nature and helping us see that we are complete, exactly as we are right now. Meditation in Buddhism is not about emptying the mind or achieving a particular state of bliss, as many people might think. It is about being present with what is, without judgment or attachment. The practice invites us to sit with ourselves, to turn inward, and to observe the flow of thoughts, emotions, and sensations without getting caught up in them. This process allows us to see our true nature, to recognize the fleeting nature of our thoughts, and to understand that we are not defined by them. Through meditation, we are able to reflect on who we truly are, beyond the constant chatter of the mind, and in that reflection, we discover that we are already complete. When you first begin a meditation practice, you may feel like you are doing something difficult, like you need to reach a certain state of peace or clarity. But the beauty of Buddhist meditation lies in the realization that you don't need to strive for anything. There's nothing you need to change or fix about yourself. Meditation simply allows you to see yourself as you are, with all your thoughts, your imperfections, and your distractions, and to accept them without judgment. In this acceptance, you begin to recognize that you are enough. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. All you need to do is be present, and in doing so, you begin to feel a deep sense of completeness. As you sit in meditation, you may start to notice the constant flow of thoughts that arise, thoughts about the past, about the future, about what you need to do or be. These thoughts can seem overwhelming at first, and the temptation might be to engage with them, to follow their lead. But meditation teaches us to observe these thoughts as they come and go, without getting caught up in them. The more you practice this, the more you begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. The thoughts do not define you, and in recognizing this, you can experience a deep sense of freedom. This awareness is where your true self resides, and through meditation, you begin to experience it more fully. Meditation also reveals how much of our mental energy is spent on trying to control or resist the flow of life. We often wish for things to be different, for our thoughts to be quieter, for our emotions to be more manageable. But meditation teaches us to let go of this need for control. Instead of trying to suppress or change our experiences, we learn to embrace them as they are. When you sit with your thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment or expectation, you begin to see that everything is temporary. The mind is constantly changing, just like everything else in life. By accepting the impermanence of your thoughts, you can let them flow freely without becoming attached to them. In this way, meditation helps us come to terms with the reality that nothing is permanent, neither our thoughts nor our feelings, and in that acceptance, we find peace. Through consistent practice, meditation helps us develop a deeper understanding of our true nature. We come to recognize that our essence is not defined by our thoughts, our roles, or our external circumstances. Instead, we are a consciousness, a presence that exists beyond these fleeting things. This awareness of our true nature is liberating because it frees us from the idea that we need to do, achieve, or become something to feel complete. In the stillness of meditation, we come to understand that we are already whole, just as we are. Buddhist meditation also teaches us to cultivate compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. When we meditate, we learn to observe our own mind and emotions with kindness and understanding. We don't judge ourselves for having wandering thoughts or feeling restless. Instead, we offer ourselves patience and acceptance. This practice of self-compassion is essential because it allows us to let go of the harsh self-criticism that often arises when we don't meet our own expectations. Instead of striving to be someone else, we learn to embrace who we are, in all our imperfections, and to love ourselves just as we are. In this love, we find the wholeness that we have been seeking. Another powerful aspect of meditation is its ability to help us release attachment. We are often attached to our thoughts, to our identity, to our achievements, or to the way things should be. These attachments create suffering because they prevent us from fully embracing the present moment. When we meditate, we learn to let go of these attachments, recognizing that they do not define us. The more we practice, the more we begin to see that our true nature is not tied to anything external. We don't need to hold on to our past, our successes, or our desires. When we let go of these attachments, we free ourselves to simply be in the present moment as we are. And in that freedom, we discover a deep sense of peace and completeness. Meditation also helps us develop the ability to sit with discomfort. Life is not always comfortable, and we often try to avoid or escape difficult emotions or situations. But in meditation, we learn to sit with whatever arises, whether it is pain, sadness, frustration, or joy, without trying to push it away or control it. This ability to stay present with discomfort is a powerful tool for growth because it teaches us to be okay with whatever is happening. We learn that we don't need to run from difficult emotions and that, in fact, by embracing them, we can gain valuable insight into ourselves. Over time, this practice of sitting with discomfort helps us cultivate resilience as we become more comfortable with the ebb and flow of life. Through meditation, we also begin to develop a greater sense of clarity. The more we practice being present, the more we begin to see things clearly. We stop being consumed by distractions and start to understand ourselves and the world around us with greater depth. Meditation allows us to quiet the noise of the mind and tune into the deeper truths that are always present, but often obscured by our constant thoughts and judgments. In this clarity, we begin to see the interconnectedness of all things, and we understand that our fulfillment is not dependent on anything outside of us. It is found within, in the space of awareness that meditation helps us cultivate. Finally, Buddhist meditation offers us the gift of peace. As we practice, we gradually experience a deep sense of calm and stillness. This peace is not something we need to chase or achieve. It is already within us. Meditation simply helps us remove the obstacles that prevent us from accessing it. In this peace, we realize that we are complete as we are. We don't need to fix ourselves, we don't need to become someone else, and we don't need to attain anything to feel whole. We already are. This realization brings with it a profound sense of contentment and joy, one that is not dependent on external circumstances, but comes from within. Through meditation, we reflect on our true nature and come to see that we are already whole. We no longer feel the need to seek or strive for fulfillment because we realize that it is already here, in the present moment, within us. In the stillness of meditation, we find peace, clarity, and love for ourselves. And in that space, we recognize that we are enough. We are complete, just as we are. As you begin to embrace compassion and cultivate kindness within yourself and toward others, a deeper understanding starts to emerge. The realization that much of our suffering stems from our desires. While desire itself isn't inherently wrong, the Buddha teaches that it is our attachment to these desires, the belief that they are the key to happiness, that leads to pain and dissatisfaction. This shift in perspective can be life-changing. It invites us to reflect on what we truly want, not just in terms of what we think we need to feel fulfilled, but in terms of understanding the deeper roots of desire itself. When we learn to look at desire through the lens of Buddhism, we can free ourselves from its grasp and move toward a life of true contentment. Buddhism teaches us that desire is not just a passing emotion or an occasional want, it's the root cause of much of our suffering. We live in a world that constantly feeds our desires. We are told that fulfillment comes from having more success, more wealth, more possessions, and more recognition. Yet, as we look around, we see that despite these external markers of success, many people still feel incomplete, anxious, or dissatisfied. This is because desire, in its essence, is based on the belief that we are lacking something. When we chase after these desires, we are not seeking happiness or peace, but attempting to fill a void we believe exists within us. The more we desire, the more we believe we are incomplete, and the more we reinforce the idea that we need something more to be whole. Buddhism challenges this understanding by urging us to rethink our relationship with desire. The teachings of the Buddha suggest that desire isn't inherently bad, but it is our attachment to desire that leads to suffering. When we cling to the belief that we need to achieve, own, or experience something to be complete, we are operating from a place of lack. This mentality keeps us in a constant cycle of wanting, acquiring, and then wanting more again. It's a cycle that never truly satisfies because fulfillment is always just out of reach. In Buddhism, desire is seen as a form of craving that can never be fully satisfied, because once one desire is met, another will arise, and the cycle continues. The shift in understanding comes when we recognize that the problem is not with the desire itself, but with our attachment to it. Desire arises naturally within us. It's a human experience. But when we attach ourselves to the belief that fulfillment will come only from satisfying that desire, we start to suffer. It's like chasing a moving target. The more we pursue it, the further it seems to get. But when we let go of the attachment to desire, we stop defining ourselves by what we lack, and instead, we start to experience life as it is, with all its imperfections and beauty. We begin to see that we are already whole, and nothing outside of us can complete us. This is where Buddhism introduces a radical shift in how we approach contentment. Instead of constantly seeking more, we learn to turn inward and recognize the inherent peace and satisfaction that already exists within us. When we stop seeking fulfillment outside of ourselves, we start to understand that true happiness doesn't depend on having more or achieving more. It comes from being present, from accepting life as it is, and from appreciating the simple beauty of each moment. When we release the need to chase after desires, we allow ourselves to be fully content with what is. This shift, from wanting more to appreciating what we have, opens up the space for true peace and contentment. The key to this shift is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of observing our desires without judgment, attachment. It allows us to see our cravings for what they are: impermanent and fleeting. When we become aware of our desires, we can begin to examine them without becoming consumed by them. Mindfulness teaches us to recognize that desires are not the problem, but the attachment to them is what causes us to suffer. By observing our desires without clinging to them, we free ourselves from their control. We begin to understand that we do not need to satisfy every craving in order to feel complete. In fact, the more we let go of our attachment to desires, the more peaceful and content we become. Through this practice of mindfulness, we also begin to see that our desires are often shaped by external influences: society, culture, advertising, and even the expectations of others. We are conditioned to believe that we must constantly strive for more in order to be happy. But when we become mindful of these influences, we can start to disentangle ourselves from them. We begin to see that the desires we chase are often not our own, but are instead a reflection of what others have told us we need. This awareness allows us to let go of the pressure to conform to societal expectations and to cultivate a deeper understanding of what truly brings us fulfillment. In Buddhism, the practice of letting go of desire is also tied to the understanding of impermanence. When we recognize that everything is constantly changing, including our desires, we begin to see that nothing is permanent, including the things we think will bring us lasting satisfaction. This awareness helps us break free from the attachment to external desires and instead focus on cultivating internal peace. Impermanence teaches us that nothing outside of us can provide lasting fulfillment. The more we seek external sources of happiness, the more we reinforce the belief that we are incomplete. But when we turn inward and recognize the impermanent nature of our desires, we begin to experience true contentment in the present moment. Another important aspect of Buddhism's view on desire is the concept of non-attachment. Non-attachment doesn't mean that we stop having desires or that we stop pursuing our goals. It simply means that we let go of the need to control the outcome. Non-attachment teaches us to engage with life fully, without getting caught up in the belief that our happiness depends on achieving a certain result. When we stop defining ourselves by our desires or the outcomes we hope for, we create space for true peace and contentment. We can work toward our goals, but we no longer rely on them to complete us. This shift in perspective also helps us develop compassion for ourselves and others. When we recognize that desire is the root cause of suffering, we begin to understand that everyone is affected by this same cycle. We can offer compassion to others who are caught in the pursuit of external desires, knowing that they, too, are seeking fulfillment in the wrong place. At the same time, we can show compassion to ourselves, knowing that we, too, are often driven by the desire for things outside of us to bring us peace. By understanding this shared experience, we can move toward greater acceptance and understanding, both for ourselves and for those around us. When we embrace the teachings of Buddhism on desire, we begin to experience a profound sense of freedom. We realize that we are not defined by our desires, and that our fulfillment does not depend on achieving external goals. Instead, we learn to cultivate contentment in the present moment, appreciating what we have and letting go of the constant need for more. This shift in perspective is not about denying our desires or abandoning our goals, but about releasing the attachment to them as the source of our happiness. We learn to appreciate life as it is, without constantly striving for something more. In this acceptance, we find the true peace and fulfillment that we have been searching for. As we explore the nature of desire and its role in shaping our experiences, we come to a powerful realization that true fulfillment doesn't come from striving for more, but from recognizing that what we already have is enough. This concept of enough is central to Buddhist philosophy, and it holds the key to peace and contentment. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more, to acquire more things, reach more goals, and gain more recognition, it can be difficult to truly appreciate what we already have. However, the wisdom of Buddhism encourages us to step back and recognize that everything we need for a fulfilling life is already within our reach. The practice of realizing enough allows us to find peace, not in what is missing, but in what is already present in our lives. The concept of sufficiency in Buddhism isn't about settling for less or denying ourselves joy. It's about recognizing that we don't need to chase after external markers of success or happiness to feel complete. The belief that something is always missing drives us to search for fulfillment outside of ourselves. But Buddhism teaches us that true contentment comes when we realize that we are already whole. We are already enough. When we stop chasing more, when we stop looking for happiness in external things, we can begin to cultivate a sense of peace and fulfillment in the present moment. This recognition frees us from the cycle of desire and craving that keeps us stuck in a constant pursuit of something more, something better. Sufficiency doesn't mean that we stop dreaming or striving for improvement. It simply means that we stop measuring our worth by what we have or what we achieve. We begin to see that our value is not defined by external possessions or accomplishments, but by our inherent nature. The Buddha taught that we are all interconnected, and that fulfillment comes not from what we possess, but from understanding our place in the world and embracing the present moment as it is. When we recognize that we already have enough, we stop seeking validation from the outside world and start finding peace within. The peace that comes from realizing sufficiency is not based on comparison or accumulation, but on acceptance of what is. One of the key teachings in Buddhism is the idea of non-attachment. This principle is crucial to understanding the concept of enough. When we are attached to something, whether it's a material possession, a relationship, or a particular outcome, we create a sense of lack within ourselves. We begin to believe that our happiness depends on acquiring or holding on to these things. However, when we practice non-attachment, we release the need for external validation and recognize that we are already complete. We don't need to chase after anything to feel fulfilled. Instead, we begin to find joy in the simple act of being present, appreciating what we already have. Non-attachment teaches us to live with a sense of peace, knowing that everything we need is already within us and that nothing outside of ourselves can make us whole. This understanding of sufficiency can transform our relationships too. When we believe that we are already enough, we stop relying on others to complete us or make us feel worthy. We can engage with others from a place of love and connection rather than from a place of need. Relationships become an opportunity for mutual support rather than a means of fulfilling a sense of lack. This shift allows us to approach others with more compassion, because we no longer view them through the lens of wanting something from them. Instead, we see them as complete individuals, and we appreciate them for who they are, not for what they can provide us. Realizing that we are enough also changes the way we view challenges and difficulties. Often, we experience frustration or disappointment when things don't go as planned. We may feel that we are not enough because we haven't achieved a certain goal or met a particular expectation. However, when we understand sufficiency, we begin to see that challenges are not a reflection of our inadequacy, but a natural part of life. They are opportunities for growth and learning. When we are grounded in the understanding that we are already enough, we can face challenges with a sense of calm and resilience. We no longer need to prove ourselves or strive for perfection. We can simply be present with whatever arises, knowing that we are whole and capable, no matter the outcome. In Buddhism, the practice of contentment is closely tied to the concept of enough. When we embrace sufficiency, we begin to practice gratitude for what we have, rather than focusing on what we don't have. Contentment arises when we stop searching for happiness in external things and start finding joy in the simple blessings of life. Gratitude helps us recognize that we are already surrounded by abundance, even if it doesn't look the way we expected. We can be content with what we have, because we understand that true happiness is not about accumulation, but about presence. The more we practice contentment, the more we find peace in our lives, because we begin to appreciate the beauty of what is already here. The concept of enough also teaches us to let go of the constant comparisons that often lead to dissatisfaction. We live in a world where we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, whether it's in terms of wealth, success, appearance, or lifestyle. But Buddhism encourages us to see that these comparisons only create suffering. When we focus on what others have or what they have achieved, we forget to appreciate what we have and who we are. Realizing that we are enough means we stop measuring our worth against the standards of others. We begin to find value in our own journey, in our own unique path, and in the things that bring us peace and joy, rather than what society deems as important. This shift allows us to release the need for validation and approval from the outside world and to find fulfillment in the present moment, as it is. As we deepen our understanding of sufficiency, we also begin to recognize how much our desires are shaped by societal conditioning. From a young age, we are taught to want more, to seek success, to accumulate wealth, and to always be striving for something better. But Buddhism teaches us to question this mindset. We don't need to conform to the standards set by others to find peace. We are already enough, as we are. When we let go of the pressure to meet external expectations, we free ourselves to live authentically. We begin to make choices that align with our true values, rather than trying to fit into a mold created by society. This freedom from societal pressure allows us to live more fully and find fulfillment in the things that truly matter to us. The practice of enough also involves recognizing the impermanence of all things. When we understand that everything is temporary, our possessions, our achievements, even our relationships, we stop holding on to things as though they define us. We begin to appreciate life for what it is, in its fleeting beauty. We realize that nothing lasts forever, and in that understanding, we are able to let go of the need to cling to things. The concept of impermanence reinforces the idea of sufficiency because it reminds us that we don't need to hold on to anything too tightly. We can experience joy and peace in the present moment, knowing that each moment is precious, even if it is brief. When we finally accept that we are enough, we begin to experience a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. We stop searching for happiness in the future or in external circumstances, and instead, we find it right where we are. This peace comes from a place of acceptance, of embracing life as it is, without constantly striving for something more. We begin to realize that nothing is missing, that we are already whole, and that true happiness is found not in what we acquire, but in how we live and experience each moment. This understanding of sufficiency leads us to a life of contentment, peace, and lasting fulfillment because we recognize that we have everything we need right here, right now. As we begin to understand that we are already enough, we uncover a deeper layer of fulfillment that is available to us right now. This fulfillment does not stem from the accumulation of things or the pursuit of unattainable goals, but from a profound shift in how we perceive and appreciate the world around us. It's a shift rooted in gratitude, the practice of recognizing the abundance in every moment, no matter how simple or challenging it may seem. Buddhist teachings invite us to cultivate gratitude not only in moments of joy, but also in moments of hardship. Through this practice, we begin to see that life, in all its forms, is abundant. And it is through this recognition that we find peace and contentment. At the heart of Buddhism is the understanding that everything is interconnected, and that our sense of fulfillment is often clouded by the illusion that we are lacking something. When we are caught in this mindset of scarcity, we fail to recognize the richness of life as it is. We become consumed by the things we don't have, the goals we haven't yet achieved, or the challenges we face, and in doing so, we overlook the beauty and abundance already present in our lives. Gratitude is the antidote to this mindset of scarcity. It shifts our focus from what's missing to what's already here, and in this shift, we begin to see life through a lens of abundance. Gratitude is not just about saying thank you when something good happens. It's about deeply appreciating the simple moments of life, the things that often go unnoticed, the warmth of the sun, the sound of a loved one's voice, the comfort of a meal, or the stillness of the early morning. Buddhism teaches that abundance is found in the ordinary, in the small, often overlooked details of life. When we practice gratitude, we begin to see the richness in everything, even in the mundane. We stop waiting for the next big thing, the next milestone, to bring us happiness, and instead, we cultivate joy in the present moment. In Buddhism, the practice of gratitude is closely linked to mindfulness. To be truly grateful, we must be fully present in the moment, able to recognize and appreciate the gifts life offers us. This requires a shift in how we relate to time and experience. When we are caught in the rush of life, consumed by worries about the future or regrets about the past, we miss the abundance of the present. But mindfulness helps us slow down, be present, and notice what is around us. By paying attention to the details of each moment, we begin to cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for everything that is already here. Gratitude also has a transformative effect on how we relate to challenges. It is easy to feel grateful when things are going well, but true gratitude arises when we can also appreciate the difficulties we face. Buddhism teaches that suffering is an inevitable part of life, but it is through suffering that we learn, grow, and transform. When we can find gratitude in the midst of pain or hardship, we begin to see these experiences not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. We realize that everything, even suffering, is part of the larger picture of life's abundance. Gratitude helps us to find meaning in our challenges and to see that they are not separate from the richness of life. In cultivating gratitude, we also come to realize that abundance is not limited to material wealth or success. Often, we think of abundance as something we acquire: money, possessions, achievements. But Buddhist teachings remind us that true abundance lies in our relationships, our inner peace, and our capacity to love and be loved. The more we practice gratitude, the more we realize that these intangible forms of abundance are often far more fulfilling than anything material. Gratitude deepens our connections with others because it helps us to recognize the value of the people in our lives. It allows us to see them not as sources of validation or fulfillment, but as fellow human beings worthy of love and appreciation. One of the most powerful aspects of gratitude is its ability to shift our perspective on life. When we focus on what we are grateful for, we begin to see the world as abundant rather than lacking. This shift in perspective has a profound effect on our well-being. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude regularly can increase levels of happiness, reduce stress, and improve overall health. By focusing on the positive aspects of our lives, we naturally shift our energy toward what is good rather than dwelling on what is missing. Gratitude helps us to feel more content, more at peace, and more connected to the world around us. In Buddhism, the practice of gratitude is not a one-time effort, but a way of living. It is a continual process of recognizing and appreciating the abundance of life, even in the midst of challenges. Each moment offers an opportunity to cultivate gratitude, whether it's in a quiet moment of reflection, during a conversation with a friend, or when facing a difficult situation. Gratitude helps us to remain present and connected. As we develop this practice, we begin to see that there is always something to be grateful for, no matter the circumstances. Gratitude also deepens our understanding of impermanence. When we recognize that everything is transient, our experiences, our relationships, even our own lives, we begin to appreciate each moment more deeply. Gratitude allows us to hold our experiences lightly, knowing that they are fleeting, and yet precious because of their impermanence. Instead of clinging to the past or wishing for a future that doesn't exist yet, we learn to savor the present, knowing that it, too, will pass. This awareness of impermanence makes our moments of gratitude all the more meaningful, because we understand that they are part of the beautiful flow of life. Through gratitude, we also cultivate a sense of interconnectedness. We begin to see that everything in life is interconnected: the people we encounter, the experiences we have, the opportunities we are given. Gratitude allows us to recognize the contributions of others to our lives, whether they are small acts of kindness or deep, meaningful relationships. We start to see that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a larger, interconnected web of life. This understanding of interdependence deepens our gratitude, because we recognize that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. As we continue to practice gratitude, we begin to experience a shift in how we relate to our desires and expectations. In the past, we may have believed that fulfillment would come from acquiring more or achieving certain goals. But through the practice of gratitude, we learn to appreciate the present moment, to recognize the richness that already exists around us, we begin to see that we don't need to chase after more in order to be happy. Happiness is found in the awareness that we already have everything we need in the present moment. The practice of gratitude helps us release the belief that something is missing and instead shows us that everything we need for a fulfilling life is already here. Ultimately, the practice of gratitude opens our hearts to the abundance of life. It allows us to see the world as a place of plenty, not scarcity, and helps us find joy in the simple, everyday moments that make life rich. Gratitude is a powerful tool for cultivating peace because it shifts our focus from what is lacking to what is already present. By practicing gratitude in every situation, we learn to live with a sense of abundance, knowing that we are enough and that life is enough, just as it is. Through this lens of gratitude, we can begin to experience a deep, lasting fulfillment that comes from appreciating the beauty in all things, no matter how simple or challenging they may seem. As we move through life, it often feels like we need to fill the silence with constant activity, thoughts, and noise. We chase after distractions, believing that in the noise, we will find something that will complete us: more information, more stimulation, more external validation. However, as we've learned from the practices of mindfulness and gratitude, true fulfillment does not come from external sources. It comes from within, from a deep sense of inner peace that is always accessible when we learn to listen, when we embrace stillness. In silence, we come face to face with our true nature and realize that everything we need has been here all along. The paradox of stillness is that in the moments when we stop trying to do, when we let go of our need to fill the space around us, we open the door to profound insight and connection. We often think that silence is empty, that it's something to be feared or avoided because it leaves us alone with our thoughts. But in Buddhism, silence is not a void. It is a space for reflection, for clarity, and for deep understanding. It is through silence, particularly in the practice of meditation, that we can begin to realize that our true essence is not something we have to strive for or attain. It is already within us. All we need to do is pause and allow ourselves to connect with the stillness that resides beneath the surface of our busy lives. In meditation, silence provides us with the opportunity to step out of the constant flow of thought, out of the cycle of wanting, striving, and doing. The more we practice sitting in silence, the more we realize that the thoughts that often dominate our minds are not our true selves. They are transient, fleeting, and impermanent. In silence, we can observe these thoughts without attachment, without judgment. This space between thoughts is where we connect with our true nature, where we experience the fullness of our being. As we sit quietly, the noise of the world fades, and we can begin to hear the deeper, subtler truths that lie beneath the surface. The practice of meditation, particularly when done in silence, allows us to move beyond the noise of our everyday lives and touch into something much deeper. It's through this quiet space that we begin to recognize that our sense of self, our identity, is not defined by the constant chatter of our minds or by our external achievements. Our true self is not something we need to chase or build. It is already within us. When we stop trying to be something else, when we stop seeking fulfillment outside of ourselves, we begin to experience the peace and contentment that comes from simply being. The silence offers us a mirror, reflecting back to us the wholeness that has always been there, waiting to be recognized. There is a great power in silence. In our noisy, fast-paced world, silence may feel like an unfamiliar and uncomfortable space. However, when we embrace it, we begin to see that it is the space where transformation happens. In silence, we can connect with our inner wisdom and clarity. away from the constant noise that distracts us from what truly matters. It's in these moments of stillness that we can listen to the truth of our hearts, hear the whispers of our deepest desires, and feel the fullness of our being. Silence allows us to simply be, without the pressure to do, to perform, or to achieve. In this being, we experience the peace that comes with knowing that we are enough, that we do not need anything more to feel complete. Meditation, particularly in silence, also helps us let go of the need to control. It is in our busyness, in our constant striving, that we try to force life into the shapes and outcomes we want. But true peace comes when we let go of this need for control and instead surrender to the natural flow of life. The silence of meditation allows us to see this more clearly. In silence, we are reminded that we don't need to force or control our experiences. We just need to allow them to unfold as they are. When we stop resisting, when we stop trying to control, we begin to feel a sense of ease and relaxation that comes from knowing we don't have to do everything. In silence, we experience the freedom of simply being and letting things unfold without judgment or expectation. This freedom is liberating because it teaches us that we don't need to be anything other than ourselves to be worthy. Often, we get caught up in the idea that we need to change, achieve, or become something different in order to be fulfilled. But the practice of stillness and silence helps us realize that fulfillment does not come from these external things. It comes from accepting ourselves as we are, from connecting with the stillness within that is always present, no matter what is happening in the world around us. In silence, we begin to hear the message that we are already whole, already complete. Silence also teaches us to observe without reacting. In our everyday lives, we are often caught in a cycle of reacting to what happens around us, reacting to our thoughts and emotions, and reacting to what we think others expect from us. But in meditation, we learn to simply observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment or reaction. This practice is key to experiencing the fullness of our being because it allows us to detach from the stories and labels we place on ourselves and others. By simply observing, we create space between our thoughts and our identity. We begin to see that we are not defined by our thoughts, emotions, or external circumstances. We are the awareness behind them. In this awareness, we find peace. This process of observing without reacting also applies to our relationships with others. In silence, we learn to listen not just with our ears, but with our hearts. We learn to truly hear others without judgment, without the need to respond or fix. We create space for others to be themselves, and in doing so, we create space for deeper connection and understanding. When we stop filling the air with words and judgments, we open up to the richness of truly being present with someone, and in this presence, we find fulfillment. Silence allows us to connect with others in a way that words alone cannot. As we continue to practice meditation and embrace silence, we begin to experience a deep sense of inner peace and stillness that carries over into our daily lives. The practice of silence doesn't end when we leave the cushion. It becomes a part of how we move through the world. We learn to carry that stillness within us, even in the midst of chaos or distraction. We begin to recognize that no matter what happens externally, the peace and fulfillment we seek are always available to us internally. It is through silence that we come to understand that we do not need to search for peace, happiness, or fulfillment. They are already within us. In silence, we can reconnect with this truth, and in doing so, we discover the fullness of our being. In the stillness, we find clarity. We begin to understand that our minds are not the source of our fulfillment. Our hearts, our true nature, are the wellspring of peace and contentment. The noise of the world may try to pull us away from this truth, but when we return to silence, We reconnect with the essence of who we are. Meditation and silence allow us to strip away the distractions, the attachments, and the beliefs that cloud our perception. In that clarity, we see that everything we need is already within us. We are whole, just as we are. The paradox of stillness is that in stopping, we find everything we have been searching for. It is in silence that we realize we have never truly been lacking, we have always been complete. As we explore the deep peace that arises from meditation and the stillness of being, we are led to an even more profound truth. Peace is not simply found in moments of silence or retreat, but in the way we relate to the everyday flow of life. It's easy to feel that peace is something that can only be accessed in perfect conditions or when everything aligns just right. But true fulfillment comes when we can accept life exactly as it is, without resistance or judgment. This practice of joyful acceptance, so central to Buddhist teachings, invites us to embrace life in all its imperfection, to meet each moment as it comes, and to find completeness in the act of simply being with what is. Acceptance is often misunderstood as resignation or passivity, but in the Buddhist tradition, it is a powerful act of strength and liberation. It is not about giving up or turning away from life's challenges. Rather, it is about embracing life fully, without attempting to force it to be different. When we practice joyful acceptance, we let go of the desire to control or change the circumstances around us. We stop struggling against the natural flow of life, and instead, we learn to meet whatever arises with an open heart and mind. In doing so, we discover a deep sense of peace that comes not from changing our circumstances, but from changing how we respond to them. The practice of acceptance invites us to release the need for things to be perfect. So often, we hold on to expectations of how life should unfold. We may think that happiness will come when we get that promotion, when we find the perfect relationship, or when everything finally falls into place. However, the Buddha teaches us that happiness does not depend on external circumstances. True happiness arises when we stop waiting for things to be different and start embracing the present moment as it is. Acceptance teaches us that life is not meant to be controlled or perfected, it is meant to be experienced in all its rawness and beauty. When we let go of the illusion that things should be different, we free ourselves from the struggle and begin to experience the fullness of life as it is. The practice of joyful acceptance also helps us release the weight of resistance. We are often caught in a cycle of wanting things to be other than they are, which creates frustration, stress, and discontent. We resist our feelings, our circumstances, or even the simple flow of time, thinking that we must change them in order to find peace. But when we accept things as they are, without judgment or resistance, we stop fighting against the current of life. We stop exhausting ourselves with the constant effort to control, and in that release, we find a natural sense of ease. Acceptance doesn't mean that we stop acting or striving for better things. It means that we act without attachment to specific outcomes, without the pressure to make things go a certain way. This freedom from resistance allows us to move through life with greater grace and peace. One of the most profound shifts that comes with joyful acceptance is the ability to fully embrace the present moment without constantly wishing for something different. When we stop resisting the present, we begin to see that it is rich with possibility, full of opportunities for growth, connection, and joy. Even in the midst of challenges, acceptance allows us to see the lessons, the beauty, and the growth that lie within every experience. Life, in all its imperfection, becomes a gift, something to be cherished rather than resisted. By embracing the present as it is, we free ourselves from the constant need to search for something better, and we begin to find peace in the simple act of being. This doesn't mean that we ignore our pain or difficulties. Joyful acceptance does not require us to deny our emotions or to pretend that everything is perfect. Instead, it means acknowledging our pain, our struggles, and our imperfections without trying to escape them or change them immediately. It means sitting with our discomfort without judgment and allowing it to be part of the whole experience of life. By accepting our difficulties, we allow ourselves to process them fully, and in that space, we often find that they begin to lose their power over us. We stop trying to avoid or control the difficult parts of life, and instead, we find a deeper sense of peace in accepting them as part of the whole. Buddhism also teaches us that the path of acceptance involves letting go of attachment. We are often attached to certain outcomes, to people, or to specific ideas of how life should unfold. When we cling to these attachments, we create suffering because we are attached to something that is constantly changing. Acceptance teaches us to release our grip on these attachments and to allow life to flow naturally. When we let go of our attachment to particular outcomes or circumstances, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We are no longer bound by our desires, but instead, we are free to experience life as it is, in all its beauty and complexity. Another important aspect of joyful acceptance is the practice of gratitude. When we accept life as it is, we begin to see it as a gift. Gratitude allows us to appreciate the things we have, rather than focusing on what we don't have. It teaches us to recognize the abundance that is already present in our lives, even in the midst of difficulties. By cultivating gratitude, we shift our focus from scarcity to abundance, from lack to sufficiency. Acceptance and gratitude work hand in hand as we learn to find joy in what is already here, without constantly seeking something more. The more we practice joyful acceptance, the more we learn to see the impermanence of everything. Life is constantly changing, and when we accept this, we stop resisting it. We begin to see that nothing is fixed or permanent, and that this fluidity is what makes life beautiful. Each moment, each experience is unique, and when we accept this, we begin to appreciate it fully. We no longer try to hold on to moments, people, or things, because we understand that everything will pass in its own time. This awareness of impermanence allows us to experience life with a deeper sense of presence, knowing that the present moment is the only one we truly have. In practicing joyful acceptance, we also cultivate a sense of humility. We begin to understand that we are not in control of everything in life. Life will unfold as it will, and we are simply participants in this vast, interconnected web of existence. By accepting this truth, we release the pressure to be in control and begin to trust in the process of life. This humility allows us to live with more ease, knowing that we don't have to have everything figured out. We can simply be present, accept what is, and trust that everything is unfolding as it should. When we embrace joyful acceptance, we begin to experience life with a sense of fullness that cannot be found in the pursuit of more. The more we accept life as it is, the more we recognize that we don't need to change or acquire anything to feel complete. We are already whole. Acceptance opens the door to peace because it frees us from the constant desire for something different. We stop trying to manipulate life into fitting our expectations, and instead, we allow it to be exactly what it is. In that space, we discover a deep sense of contentment, knowing that life, in all its imperfections, is enough. This practice doesn't mean we stop striving for growth or change. It simply means that we do so from a place of acceptance. We can work toward our goals, pursue our dreams, and improve ourselves, but we no longer attach our worth or happiness to achieving specific outcomes. We can be content with the process, with the journey, without waiting for a destination to bring us fulfillment. Joyful acceptance teaches us that the path itself is just as valuable as the destination. When we stop resisting, we find that every step along the way offers its own beauty and wisdom. Ultimately, the practice of joyful acceptance helps us find peace in the present moment, without the need for external circumstances to change. It teaches us that we are already whole, that we do not need to constantly strive or seek something more to feel fulfilled. Through acceptance, we release the struggle, and in doing so, we uncover the abundance that is already present in our lives. In accepting life as it is, we find a deep sense of peace and completeness that arises from within, not from what we have or what we achieve, but from the simple act of being with what is. As we embrace the practice of joyful acceptance, we begin to see how deeply connected it is to the fear of loss that so often drives our anxieties and struggles. We may have come to accept life as it is, but there still lingers a quiet fear, a fear that we will lose what we have, that what is precious to us will slip away. This fear holds us back, prevents us from fully living, and creates an undercurrent of unease in our minds. In Buddhism, we are invited to explore a path that frees us from this constant anxiety. It is the path of living without fear of loss, a path that teaches us how letting go of attachment and fear allows us to experience true peace, unshaken by the impermanent nature of life. The truth is that loss is inevitable. Whether it's the loss of a relationship, a possession, a moment in time, or even our own health, everything in life is temporary. When we become attached to these things, we inevitably set ourselves up for pain, because we believe that losing them will mean losing something essential about ourselves. We may fear that we are incomplete without certain people, accomplishments, or material things, and this fear keeps us clinging to them in ways that create stress and anxiety. Buddhism offers a radical perspective. Instead of fearing loss, we can learn to accept it as part of the natural flow of life. By releasing our attachment to the idea of permanence, we discover that true fulfillment is not dependent on holding on to things, but on embracing life as it is, with all of its changes and challenges. The Buddhist path to living without fear of loss begins with understanding the nature of attachment. Attachment is not just about holding on to physical things, it is about our emotional investment in them. When we attach ourselves to something, whether it's a person, a job, or a future plan, we begin to define our sense of self in relation to it. This attachment creates a false sense of security, as if these external things are the key to our happiness and stability. The more we hold on to these attachments, the more we set ourselves up for fear and anxiety, because we know, on some level, that they are not permanent. They can be taken from us, or they can change in ways we cannot control. When we let go of this attachment, we begin to see that our happiness does not depend on the things we possess or the outcomes we hope for. True peace comes from the recognition that we are complete as we are, independent of external circumstances. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life is interconnected and nothing lasts forever, including our attachments. Once we accept the impermanence of life, we start to let go of the need to cling to things. We no longer view the potential for loss as a threat, but as a natural part of the cycle of life. This understanding allows us to experience life with greater freedom, knowing that we do not need to hold on to anything to feel fulfilled. Living without fear of loss requires us to cultivate a sense of trust in the flow of life. Instead of living in constant worry about what might be taken from us, we begin to embrace life as it is, in all its unpredictability. We trust that, even in the face of change and loss, we will find the strength to move forward. This trust does not come from a belief that everything will always go our way, or that life will always be easy. It comes from the understanding that we are resilient, that we have the capacity to adapt and find peace even in difficult circumstances. Buddhism teaches that the mind is capable of great peace when we learn to accept life as it comes, without attachment to outcomes. This practice of letting go of fear and attachment also brings us closer to our true nature. The more we let go of the things we hold on to, the more we begin to experience the fullness of our being. Our true self is not defined by the people we associate with, the work we do, or the material possessions we own. When we release attachment to these things, we come into contact with a deeper, more profound sense of who we are. This is the self that is always whole, always at peace, regardless of external circumstances. By letting go of the fear of losing what we think is essential to our happiness, we connect more deeply with this true self. And in doing so, we find a sense of fulfillment that is not dependent on anything outside of us. Fear of loss often arises from a deep sense of insecurity, the belief that we are not enough on our own, that our happiness depends on something external. But when we start to let go of these attachments, we begin to understand that our worth is inherent. We are not dependent on people or things to feel complete. We are enough, just as we are. This realization is liberating because it frees us from the constant anxiety of needing to hold on to what we think defines us. In Buddhism, this is the teaching of non-self, the understanding that our sense of identity is fluid and not bound by external factors. When we let go of the attachment to a fixed sense of self, we can live with a sense of openness and freedom, unafraid of what might change. The Buddhist path also invites us to practice mindfulness in the face of change and loss. When we are mindful, we become more aware of our reactions to loss, whether it's the loss of a relationship, a job, or even our health. Instead of reacting with fear, anger, or sadness, we learn to observe our emotions without getting caught up in them. This mindfulness allows us to experience loss without becoming consumed by it. We can feel our emotions fully without identifying with them, knowing that they, too, are impermanent. In this space of mindfulness, we are not overwhelmed by the fear of losing something, but we are able to process it with clarity and acceptance. One of the most profound aspects of living without fear of loss is the ability to be present in the moment. When we are not preoccupied with the fear of what we might lose, we are able to experience life more fully. We are able to appreciate the people in our lives, the experiences we have, and the simple moments that make life rich and meaningful. Fear of loss often keeps us in a state of constant anticipation, always worried about the future and what might go wrong. But when we release this fear, we free ourselves to be present, to enjoy life as it is, without the constant anxiety about what might be taken from us. The practice of non-attachment, which is central to this path, doesn't mean that we stop caring about the people or things in our lives. It simply means that we stop clinging to them, stop defining ourselves by them, and stop fearing their loss. We can love deeply, pursue our passions, and cherish the people in our lives without becoming dependent on them for our sense of self-worth. We can let go of the need to control or possess, and instead embrace life in its ever-changing form. In doing so, we create space for peace, joy, and fulfillment, knowing that everything we need is already within us. Living without fear of loss also helps us cultivate a sense of compassion for others. When we understand that all beings experience loss and change, we are more able to empathize with their suffering. We see that we are not alone in our struggles, and that the fear of loss is a shared human experience. This understanding fosters a sense of connection and compassion, allowing us to offer support to others without fear or judgment. We can stand beside them in their pain, knowing that we, too, are vulnerable to the ebbs and flows of life, but that together we can navigate the challenges of life with resilience and grace. In this way, living without fear of loss transforms not only how we experience life, but how we relate to others. It allows us to approach life with greater openness, flexibility, and peace. We stop living in fear of the future, and instead, we embrace the present moment with acceptance and gratitude. When we stop fearing loss, we stop defining ourselves by what we have, and we begin to experience the fullness of life, knowing that we are already whole and that nothing can truly take away our sense of peace and contentment. This is the path to eternal fulfillment, the understanding that we are complete just as we are, and that everything we need is already within us. As we reflect on the path to living without fear of loss, we also begin to uncover another hidden source of suffering, the constant comparison to others. It is so easy to measure our lives against the standards set by those around us, whether it's their success, their possessions, or their perceived happiness. We often believe that by comparing ourselves to others, we can understand where we stand in the world. But in truth, this only deepens our sense of inadequacy. Buddhism offers us a powerful antidote to this cycle of comparison. It invites us to recognize that true peace comes from embracing our unique journey without the need to measure our worth against someone else's. The more we compare ourselves to others, the more we reinforce the feeling that something is missing within us. We begin to feel that we are not enough, that we need to achieve what others have or live up to their standards in order to be fulfilled. But Buddhist teachings challenge this perception. The core principle of non-attachment applies to the constant desire to measure ourselves against others. When we compare ourselves to others, we tie our worth to external factors, things we don't control, and things that often change. The result is a constant feeling of dissatisfaction and a never-ending cycle of striving for something we don't have based on someone else's life or accomplishments. Buddhism teaches us that peace comes when we stop looking outward for validation and instead turn inward, accepting ourselves fully as we are, with all our strengths and imperfections. The practice of detaching from social comparisons starts by understanding that every individual's path is unique. When we compare ourselves to others, we forget that we are all on different journeys, shaped by our own experiences, circumstances, and lessons. What works for someone else may not be what is right for us, and vice versa. Each life is different, and it's only when we fully accept our own path, without comparing it to another's, that we can find peace. This doesn't mean that we stop learning from others or stop appreciating the success or growth that we see around us. Instead, it means that we stop measuring our worth against others' achievements. When we free ourselves from these comparisons, we can start to focus on our own growth, our own journey, and our own sense of fulfillment, which is the only standard that matters. Buddhism encourages us to embrace the present moment and to see it for what it is, not in relation to anyone else's life. When we stop comparing, we begin to see that everything we need is already within us. Peace arises from acceptance of where we are, right now, in this moment. When we stop chasing someone else's definition of success or happiness, we can begin to appreciate the beauty of our own path, with all its twists and turns. This doesn't mean we should stop striving for growth or improvement. It means that our growth is rooted in self-awareness and self-acceptance, not in the pursuit of external validation. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to stay present, to appreciate what we have, and to recognize that we are enough as we are, without needing to compare ourselves to anyone else. The more we embrace our unique journey, the more we realize that comparison only leads to suffering. When we look at others, we often fail to see the full picture. We see their successes, but not their struggles. We see their accomplishments, but not their sacrifices. Social media, in particular, amplifies this distortion, as it often presents only the highlight reel of people's lives. We may look at someone else's seemingly perfect life and feel that ours is lacking. But Buddhist teachings remind us that no one's life is perfect, and that comparing our internal reality to someone else's external circumstances will never lead to peace. Each person's path is filled with its own challenges, joys, and lessons. When we compare ourselves to others, we forget that we are all walking our own unique path, each with our own timing and circumstances. Letting go of comparisons doesn't mean we withdraw from the world or stop engaging with others. Instead, it means that we engage with others from a place of wholeness, not from a place of lack. We can celebrate the success of others without feeling diminished by it. We can learn from their experiences without measuring ourselves against them. In this way, comparison loses its power over us, and we begin to see the value in our own experiences and our own growth. This freedom from comparison also allows us to be more compassionate toward others. When we stop comparing ourselves to those around us, we begin to recognize that everyone is on their own path, with their own challenges and triumphs. We learn to appreciate the individuality of each person, and in doing so, we build deeper, more authentic connections. The Buddhist practice of detaching from comparison also teaches us to release our attachment to outcomes. So often, we measure our success by comparing it to someone else's achievements. But Buddhism teaches that true peace comes when we let go of the need to control the outcome and accept whatever unfolds. When we detach from the need for comparison, we stop defining ourselves by external measures of success. Instead, we begin to see success as an internal journey. How we feel about our progress, how we engage with the present moment, and how we stay true to our values are the true measures of success. This shift allows us to let go of the constant pressure to perform, and instead, we focus on being present, on living authentically, and on pursuing the things that truly matter to us. The practice of non-comparison is deeply connected to the Buddhist teachings on non-attachment. When we are attached to comparisons, we are attached to an outcome, to a measure of success that we think will make us feel complete. But attachment to outcomes only leads to suffering because we cannot control how things unfold. When we let go of this attachment and simply focus on the journey, we begin to experience life more fully. We stop worrying about how we measure up to others and start enjoying the process of growth and self-discovery. This acceptance of the present moment, without the constant need for comparison, allows us to experience peace, contentment, and joy, regardless of where we are on our journey. In Buddhism, it is said that the mind is like a monkey, always jumping from one thought to another. This is especially true when we compare ourselves to others. Our minds constantly shift between feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, or pride, depending on who we are comparing ourselves to. But the practice of mindfulness teaches us to observe these thoughts without attachment. Instead of getting caught up in comparing ourselves, we simply observe the thoughts as they come and go, without judgment. This practice helps us recognize that these thoughts are temporary and that they do not define us. By letting go of the need for comparison, we begin to quiet the mind and find peace in the present moment. The more we practice detaching from social comparisons, the more we come to understand that true peace and fulfillment lie within ourselves, not in how we measure up to others. We begin to focus on our own journey, our own growth, and our own unique path. When we stop comparing, we allow ourselves to be fully present in our own lives. We no longer feel the pressure to live up to someone else's standards, and we can begin to live authentically according to our own values and desires. This shift in perspective is liberating because it frees us from the constant anxiety and self-doubt that comparison creates. When we embrace our uniqueness and focus on our own journey, we discover that we are enough and that the path we are walking is exactly where we need to be. Through the practice of mindfulness and detachment, we learn that comparison only diminishes our ability to experience peace and fulfillment. When we let go of the need to measure ourselves against others, we begin to see the richness of our own lives, with all its challenges and victories. We realize that fulfillment does not come from achieving someone else's idea of success, but from embracing our own unique path, with all its imperfections and beauty. As we journey through the process of letting go of comparisons and embracing our unique path, we come to a deeper understanding of a fundamental truth. Suffering is an inevitable part of life. It's something many of us try to avoid or deny, believing that happiness is a place we should always strive for. However, Buddhism teaches us something profound. By fully acknowledging suffering, we can find a path not only to peace but to fulfillment. This realization, rooted in the Four Noble Truths, invites us to stop running from pain and instead use it as a powerful tool for growth and understanding. The more we accept suffering as an inherent part of life, the more we begin to uncover the richness that lies in fully experiencing all aspects of our existence. The Four Noble Truths offer a roadmap for understanding suffering. The first truth teaches us that suffering is a part of life, whether it comes from physical pain, emotional distress, or the deep dissatisfaction that arises from our constant striving. It's easy to think that suffering is something that happens to us, something that we can avoid or escape. But Buddhism teaches that suffering isn't something to fear or evade. It's an integral part of the human experience. In fact, acknowledging that suffering exists frees us from the idea that life should be perfect or without hardship. The very recognition of suffering allows us to move beyond illusion that happiness can be found in the absence of pain. Once we accept that suffering is an inescapable reality, we arrive at the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering. The Buddha teaches that suffering arises from desire, craving, and attachment. When we hold on tightly to things, experiences, or even identities, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. This desire to possess, to control, and to permanently secure certain outcomes creates suffering because it contradicts the natural, impermanent nature of life. When we look at life through the lens of attachment, we inevitably come to experience frustration and pain. The Buddha's second noble truth shows us that our suffering is not some random or meaningless event, but the direct result of our clinging to things that are constantly changing. The more we desire control, the more suffering we create for ourselves. Understanding the cause of suffering gives us the third noble truth, which is the cessation of suffering. This truth is where hope and liberation lie. Once we realize that suffering comes from attachment, we can begin to understand that letting go of attachment is the way to end the cycle of pain. Buddhism doesn't teach that we should stop feeling or experiencing life's ups and downs, but it teaches us how to let go of our attachment to them. The more we practice non-attachment, the more we free ourselves from the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. This does not mean we become numb to the world or to our emotions. Rather, we learn to experience life with a sense of openness and acceptance, without clinging to outcomes or trying to control the world around us. When we stop grasping at things, we begin to experience life as it is, and in this acceptance, we find peace. The fourth noble truth points us toward the path that leads to the cessation of suffering, the Eightfold Path. This path is a guide for living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. By following this path, we gradually cultivate the habits and mindsets that allow us to let go of attachment and craving. The Eightfold Path teaches us how to live in harmony with ourselves and the world around us, showing us the way to a deeper understanding of our true nature. When we practice right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life and begin to experience true fulfillment. It is not a path of escaping from suffering, but one of transformation, transforming our relationship with suffering and finding peace and wisdom within it. In Buddhism, understanding suffering is not just about recognizing it intellectually, it's about living with awareness of it in every moment. When we face our suffering directly, we stop running from it or trying to numb it with distractions or temporary pleasures. Instead, we begin to see suffering as a teacher. It teaches us about impermanence, about the nature of desire, and about the human condition. By acknowledging suffering without resistance, we open ourselves up to its lessons. We learn that suffering is not something that diminishes us, but something that allows us to grow, to understand our true nature, and to connect more deeply with others. Every experience of suffering is an opportunity to practice compassion, both for ourselves and for those around us who also experience pain. This awareness of suffering also allows us to see the interconnectedness of all beings. We are not alone in our pain. Suffering is a universal experience. As we begin to accept our own suffering, we are better able to empathize with others and to offer support and kindness without judgment. The more we embrace the reality of suffering, the more we understand that we are all in this together. Our shared experience of suffering becomes a bridge, connecting us to one another and fostering deeper compassion. Instead of seeing suffering as something to avoid or escape, we begin to see it as a shared part of the human experience that allows us to grow together in understanding and love. By deeply understanding suffering, we also begin to recognize the fullness of life. Without suffering, we would not be able to appreciate the beauty of joy or the peace of contentment. The highs and lows of life are inseparable, and each moment, whether joyful or painful, offers us the opportunity to experience life fully. When we stop seeing suffering as something to be feared or rejected, we open ourselves up to the richness of every experience. Every moment of pain carries with it the potential for growth and transformation. Every moment of joy deepens our appreciation for life's impermanence and fleeting beauty. In this way, suffering and happiness are two sides of the same coin, both leading us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The path to fulfillment through understanding suffering is not a linear one, nor is it something we achieve once and for all. It is an ongoing practice, one that requires continuous self-awareness, compassion, and mindfulness. As we cultivate these qualities, we begin to see how suffering, in all its forms, is a part of the human experience that we can live with peacefully. Through the practice of understanding suffering, we can live with greater clarity, knowing that we are not defined by our pain, but by our capacity to embrace it with wisdom and compassion. The more we let go of resistance and attachment, the more we find that fulfillment arises naturally, not from avoiding pain, but from learning to live fully with it. Suffering becomes not a barrier to happiness, but a doorway to a deeper understanding of the completeness of life. As we continue to explore how suffering shapes our journey, we uncover another essential aspect of our inner healing, our beliefs about lack. These beliefs, often ingrained over years of conditioning, tell us that we are not enough, that we need something more to feel whole or fulfilled. These limiting beliefs often lead us to experience life from a place of scarcity, believing that what we need is always just out of reach. But Buddhism offers a profound approach to healing these beliefs. Through mental discipline, we can begin to dissolve the beliefs about lack that bind us, allowing us to open up to the abundance of life that is already available to us. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind plays a central role in shaping our experience of reality. The way we perceive the world, ourselves, and our circumstances is largely determined by the beliefs and thought patterns that we hold. If we believe that we are incomplete or insufficient, we will see the world through a lens of scarcity, always feeling that something is missing. However, by practicing mental discipline, we begin to train our minds to see the world more clearly, without the distortions created by limiting beliefs. This mental training helps us recognize that scarcity is an illusion and that abundance is not something we need to acquire, it is something we can realize by changing the way we think. The first step in releasing limiting beliefs about lack is becoming aware of them. These beliefs often operate on a subconscious level, influencing our thoughts and actions without us even realizing it. We may have been taught that we are not enough, that we need to prove our worth through achievements, possessions, or external validation. This belief in our own inadequacy drives us to constantly strive for more, to chase after things that we think will fill the void within us. But Buddhism teaches that this cycle of craving and striving only leads to suffering because it is based on the false assumption that something is missing. In truth, everything we need for a fulfilling life is already within us. It is our thoughts and beliefs that create the illusion of lack. Once we become aware of these limiting beliefs, the next step is to challenge them. Buddhism teaches us that our thoughts are not fixed truths, they are temporary and can be transformed through mindfulness and awareness. The mind is like a garden, and the beliefs we hold are like seeds that we plant. If we plant seeds of scarcity and inadequacy, they will grow into thoughts and actions that reinforce these beliefs. However, if we plant seeds of abundance and sufficiency, we begin to cultivate a different experience of life. This mental discipline is not about suppressing or denying our thoughts, but about observing them without attachment and replacing them with more empowering beliefs. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to observe the thoughts that arise in our minds and gently shift our focus away from thoughts of lack toward thoughts of abundance. A key practice in Buddhism that helps release limiting beliefs about scarcity is the cultivation of compassion. When we feel inadequate or insufficient, we often become harsh and critical toward ourselves. We measure our worth against others or against some idealized version of ourselves, and when we fall short, we feel that we are lacking. But Buddhism teaches that compassion for ourselves and others is essential for healing. When we approach ourselves with compassion, we stop judging ourselves for our perceived flaws and start accepting ourselves as we are. This acceptance opens the door to recognizing that we are already whole, that we do not need to be anything other than who we are in order to be worthy of love, peace, and fulfillment. Compassion helps us release the belief that we are lacking and replaces it with the understanding that we are enough, just as we are. The practice of generosity is another important aspect of healing the mind through Buddhist wisdom. When we are caught in the belief that we do not have enough, we tend to hold on tightly to what we have, fearing that if we give, we will have less. But generosity is a powerful antidote to the belief in scarcity. When we give freely, whether it is our time, resources, or love, we begin to recognize that abundance is not something we need to hoard. Generosity teaches us that the more we give, the more we receive, not necessarily in material terms, but in peace, connection, and joy. Giving helps us dissolve the belief in lack and opens us up to the abundance that flows when we share from a place of love and gratitude. This act of generosity not only helps others, but it also heals our own minds by shifting our focus from what we don't have to what we can offer. As we practice mental discipline, we begin to develop a more positive and abundant mindset. We stop seeing the world as a place of competition and scarcity and begin to see it as a place of interconnection and possibility. Buddhism teaches that all things are interconnected, and when we recognize our connection to others and to the world around us, we begin to see the abundance that exists in every moment. This shift in perspective allows us to experience life from a place of sufficiency, knowing that we are part of a larger whole and that everything we need is available to us when we stop grasping and start trusting. Through meditation, we cultivate the ability to quiet the mind and create space for new, more empowering beliefs to arise. Meditation teaches us to observe our thoughts without getting caught up in them, and in this space of stillness, we can begin to reprogram our minds. When we sit in meditation, we create a space of non-judgmental awareness, and in this space, we can start to see our limiting beliefs for what they are: temporary thoughts that do not define us. By consistently practicing meditation, we build the mental discipline needed to challenge and release beliefs about lack, replacing them with beliefs about abundance and sufficiency. Over time, this practice helps us see the world with greater clarity and openness, recognizing that everything we need is already within us. Another crucial aspect of healing the mind is the understanding of impermanence. When we believe in scarcity, we often feel that what we have is fleeting, and we become afraid of losing it. But impermanence teaches us that everything is in constant flux. Nothing lasts forever, including our fears, anxieties, or even the things we hold dear. When we recognize the impermanent nature of all things, we stop clinging to them, and we begin to experience the freedom of living without attachment. This understanding of impermanence allows us to release the belief that we are missing something, because we recognize that everything is always changing, and with each change comes the potential for growth, renewal, and new opportunities. The practice of mental discipline in Buddhism is not just about changing our thoughts, it's about transforming our relationship to life itself. When we let go of limiting beliefs about lack, we begin to experience life in a new way, open, abundant, and full of possibility. Instead of living from a place of fear and scarcity, we begin to live from a place of trust and openness. We trust that the universe, life, and our own inner wisdom will guide us to what we need. We stop striving for things outside of ourselves and begin to find fulfillment in the present moment, in the simple act of being. Through this process, we heal the mind, not by forcing it to think differently, but by allowing it to return to its natural state of peace, clarity, and abundance. By releasing the mental blocks that tell us we are not enough, we open ourselves to the truth that everything we need is already within us. This realization is liberating because it frees us from the constant cycle of seeking and striving. When we trust that we are already whole, we can begin to live with greater ease and joy, knowing that nothing is missing. This understanding is the foundation of a life filled with abundance, not based on external possessions or achievements, but rooted in the awareness of our own inherent completeness. As we've journeyed through these Buddhist teachings, one powerful truth stands out: nothing is missing in your life. The pursuit of external validation, the fear of loss, the constant striving for more, all of it fades away when we embrace the simple yet profound reality that everything we need for peace, fulfillment, and happiness is already within us. Through practices like mindfulness, gratitude, self-compassion, and understanding suffering, we've learned that true contentment doesn't come from what we have or what we achieve. It comes from accepting life as it is, right here, right now. The path to realizing this wholeness begins with letting go of the illusion of scarcity and embracing the fullness of each moment. By releasing attachment, cultivating love and kindness, and healing the mind, we unlock the truth that we are enough, just as we are. If this journey has resonated with you, share your thoughts below. How has understanding that nothing is missing shifted your perspective on life? I'd love to hear from you. And if you found value in this, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another insight that could bring you peace and fulfillment. Let's continue this journey together.